We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases. Each week we pick a movie off of IMDb's Top 250 and dig into it. We're examining truth claims in critically acclaimed movies while also examining our own biases. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this week we're joined by Sara again, return guest.
Well, it's Sarah Taylor.
Sarah Taylor.
Sarah Taylor.
My government name.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually we went on location again for this episode. This is the only other episode. Well,
Tijuana.
We recorded at your house for a little while.
Yep. Casa de Taylor, aka Tijuana.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
We recorded the first couple episodes at your house back when we started, but then everything else has been in my crib. So
Yeah.
it's been a while since we've been on location. So
That's right.
it feels good. It's like vacation.
Tijuana.
Because we're in Tijuana.
We're traveling. Yeah. Yes. Squirting limes in our eyes.
That's how that works.
What a dream. Sarah, you're back. We're discussing a movie that we mentioned, like we always do, that was brought up last time we talked, Coco.
That's right.
Another Pixar movie. You're our Pixar expert at this point. So what's been going on in your life, Sarah, since the last time we met?
Since the last time that you guys were here to record an episode, I was very pregnant last time.
That's true.
The episode dropped. My episode dropped on a Monday. I went into labor that Monday.
That's right.
So I listened to
welcome.
my episode while in labor, and it put me to sleep, which was really nice. Isaac finished my episode while I was napping in labor, and I woke up and I was like, "Oh man, I missed it." He's like, "You did a really good job." And then approximately 24 hours later, they took my baby out for me.
Yeah.
So a little bummed that I didn't.
Labor.
It was a long labor.
And that's right, listeners. If you need help during your pregnancy, call Nelson and Jeff.
Yeah. We'll talk about Pixar movies till you fall asleep.
The link will be in the description.
It will send you into a snail's pace labor, but at least it helps kill the time. But anyway, had my son.
We really pride ourselves on putting our guests, our audience to sleep.
Or into labor.
You're not the only one who's told us that we are.
No.
I had lunch today with somebody, and they're like, "Love the show." I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "What do you like about it?" He's like, "Well, actually, it's hit and miss." I was like, "Oh, thanks."
No, I love it.
Stop digging.
That's so funny. It's my white noise.
Yeah.
We are two very white guys, so that works out. Yeah, we're the whitest.
That's actually a great name for a podcast. It's just like an all white cast.
Two white
just
guys.
white noise.
White noise. It probably exists.
Yeah.
If it does, we'd love to have you on.
Yeah.
If they're listening.
If you're listening.
We asked you a couple questions last episode, and we're gonna kind of get an update on those 3 questions, and then just see if anything's changed since the last time you've been on. So first of all, what's your political bias, or has your political bias changed in the last 11, 12-ish months?
Political bias, I don't think, has changed.
Okay.
Lots of great conversations between me and my husband because of the podcast.
Hey,
And
nice.
it's a lot of fun to be able to play for him, like, sound bites and stuff, and be like, "You'll really like this part. Like, let's talk about it." So
Nelson's really unhinged here.
no, he loves it. He's like, "Yeah,
Jeff's about to buckle again.
preach it, brother."
Yeah, it's our 2 de facto states. Jeff gives in to my insanity.
I love it. But yeah, no, not too much has changed.
Awesome. All right. And same question. Well, same idea, different question. Religiously, has anything happened within the last pretty much a year, when it comes to your beliefs and faiths and stuff like that?
And things like that.
Yeah.
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. Easy enough. For anyone who has not listened to the Inside Out episode to hear these full interview questions, go back and listen to that episode.
Kids Psychology 101.
Yeah, it's Kids Psych 101. Not to be confused with the other episode called Kids
I had to
Psychology
take off the
101.
ology
Yeah.
because it was too many characters.
And last but not least, we like to talk film on this podcast. Since we've talked previously, have you watched any new movies, or has any movies re-entered your life that's kind of become fresh again for you? Or is there any movies that are just on your mind that you'd like to share with the class?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, seeing as it's been a year almost, I've watched a lot of movies since then.
Proud of you.
Let me think. The most recent movie, new movie, I guess, that I would have seen, which makes me seem like a Disney person, which I am a Disney person, but I was really excited about this movie. I watched the new Little Mermaid because that finally dropped on Disney Plus a couple weeks ago.
You weren't excited enough about it to pay for it?
No. I debated whether or not like our daughter was old enough to go and sit through it, and I was like, no. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll take myself on a date and just go and watch the movie by myself, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. So
What'd you think?
I really liked it.
Yeah?
I really liked it. I think it's my favorite live action like remake that Disney has done. You're looking. Jeff's making a face.
I'm trying to think of all the live actions.
Cinderella, Mulan,
Pete's
Aladdin.
Dragon.
Oh, I never watched Pete's Dragon. I actually never watched Pete's Dragon originally either.
If you want your heart ripped out, watch Pete's
we
Dragon.
talked about
It's
this.
so emotional.
Yeah, I don't know if I can handle that.
It's like
The dragon eats the kid.
And
well,
regurgitates him. And
on again, off again relationship. Bryce Dallas Howard.
Actually, I became very dark over the past year. No, I will say that's something that has changed personally in the past year is I've gone to counseling.
Oh. And now you're dark.
Apparently. No, just I guess full transparency with having my son, and a few months after that was diagnosed. I don't know, that sounds very involved. Have been going through postpartum depression, so just figuring that out.
I've had postpartum depression since I was 1.
Just leaving the
It was my post.
womb.
Yeah.
I want to go home.
Cold out here.
Nelson, that's a different.
Right.
That's a different thing.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, but yeah, so I've been going to counseling, which has been huge. Been.
Are you seeing a Christian or secular counselor?
I'm seeing a Christian counselor.
Okay.
Yeah, who actually doesn't have kids. I don't think. Isn't married. I don't think.
Single people out there, if you're listening,
Yeah.
in the counselor.
Don't discount your perspective because it's huge. But yeah, so I've been learning a lot about trauma, my own, and like childhood trauma, birth trauma from having my kids, and just how that affects me as a person. So it's very ironic, I feel like, that my episode was labeled kid psych. I mean, I guess, I don't know, that's like children's psychology. But anyways, I've been on a really big journey with that over the last year.
Cool.
But anyways, most recent movie has been Little Mermaid. A good friend of ours who just moved up here, he hasn't seen Christopher Nolan's Batman series. So we're going to start that soon with him.
Yes.
But yeah, Christopher Nolan, like Jeff, is my favorite director, but I've seen a majority of his movies.
Rub it in. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of some of his films. Yeah, I know my shortcomings. Yeah.
So that's kind of recent with movies of what's been on my radar to rewatch versus stuff that's new. I still have not seen the Barbie movie.
Okay.
So.
Neither have I. Have you watched it yet?
No, but
Okay.
I've watched a couple reviews of it, so I have opinions.
Okay. I don't think it
not
takes
fair.
reviews to give you opinions.
Yeah, I have strong opinions on it.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
I'm waiting for that to come to a streaming service. If it's
I know.
maybe if it already is, I've just missed that. But yeah, I've not watched that one yet. And we don't talk about this much, but do you watch any small screen stuff? Anything on TV or any like series, like just to kind of dive a little deeper from our previous conversation?
Yes.
Like, is there any small screen stuff that you enjoy?
Yes. Man, Only Murders in the Building
Yes.
is what I've been trying to catch up on. It's really, really hard. Like just you guys understand this.
Yep.
I've got young children in the house, so I try to be careful of like what I watch in front of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of language in that show.
Yeah, so I wait until they go to bed, and depending on how tired I am, determines what exactly I pick. But
Yeah.
That's
Only
fair.
Murders in the Building. I don't watch, like, I call it garbage TV. I'm a social, like, bachelorette watcher. Like, if someone, it's almost like the Super Bowl for me. If someone's going to have a watch party and have snacks, then, like, I'll go, but I don't watch my own.
Yeah, that's not what the Super Bowl is like for most people, though, Sarah.
But
It's
yeah.
kind of like a big thing.
Yeah, but I'm there for the snacks and the halftime show. So for the Bachelorette. Anyways, all that to say, Love is Blind came out on Netflix,
Yeah.
which that's like my guilty pleasure. So
What about Love on the Spectrum?
that's not a guilty pleasure. Have you seen Down for Love? every season of Love on the Spectrum. Just finished Down for Love. Isaac and I have continued watching Seinfeld.
Yeah.
We just like slowly pluck our way through Seinfeld. So
We talked about this last week, or no, it was all fair. It
weeks
was
ago.
all fair.
Yeah.
We were talking on the couch and stuff. But did you see Jerry Seinfeld did stand up recently?
no.
And well, okay, that's not the.
He does that all the time.
Yeah.
He's in Vegas. Permanently.
He was recorded visually and audibly saying a joke about Seinfeld and then alluding to something of how it ended and going, well, that's not the full story. You'll just have to wait and see.
No, they can't. I just want. I want
but that's
people
it. There's
to just.
nothing's been announced. No one else has said anything.
I hope that
it's like-
they don't do anything.
I hope it's just a
Do
reunion.
you watch
Like
Curb Your Enthusiasm?
No.
Larry David?
Yeah. All of the darker bits of Seinfeld were Larry David. So Curb Your Enthusiasm is Larry David without Jerry Seinfeld to temper him
Lighthearted.
and lighten it up.
Oh, jeez.
It's incredible. I have to take this off the rails for a second.
You haven't brought us on the rails yet.
Yeah, I know.
Continued to keep us off the rails.
I just want to say, Sarah, this is a conversation that unfortunately didn't hear the first half of, but Jeff right now is reading a book titled An Indigenous People's History of the United States.
Oh, cool.
No.
And I had, based off of the synopsis he provided, made some assumptions, and he said, "You're making those assumptions just based off the synopsis." I'm like, "Yep," and I'd be really willing to bet hard money that I'd be right. I'm still open to reading the book, but like Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, not a very indigenous name, telling me about the sins of Europeans, colonizing and it's going to take a very left-leaning slant was a lot of my assumptions. In editing our most recent episode, of course, I linked the book on because that's what we do. And while linking it, I noticed that it's book 3 of 5. Did you know this?
Yes. And each book in the series is is the American history from a different minority's perspective.
Yeah.
African Americans, I believe, and this is all coming off the dome, so I could be wrong. Correct me.
Okay.
African women is one of them, right? So there's African Americans and then African women.
Yeah.
There's the LGBTQ community, right?
I'll just read you the titles.
How about you? Yeah, just read me the titles.
So book 1,
I was going to stop
A
after the
Queer
third one.
History of the United States.
Yeah.
Book 2, A Disability History of the United States. Book 3, An Indigenous Peoples. 4, An African American and Latinx History of the United States. And 5, A Black Woman's History of the United States.
Okay, hold on. Was that the name of the book? Like, was that the way the book, the fourth book?
I'm sure some people would pronounce it Latinx instead of Latinx.
I actually love that you called it Latinx.
Okay. I was just making sure. There was a face made. I just wanted to make sure.
No, she wasn't rolling her eyes at me. She was rolling her eyes at Latinx.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, no.
Okay.
And I want to say that given the titles of the other 4 books in this series, I'm even more certain about my presuppositions about the book that you're reading.
Good for you, Nelson.
So.
I'm glad you shared this with the class.
ABC.
Read the
Always
books.
double down.
Read the books or stop making assumptions. You're guessing. So
I'm gonna break your chair.
what was the title of the 5th book?
The 5th one?
Yes.
A Black Woman's History of the United
Okay,
States.
so I was right. Okay,
Yeah.
sweet.
You're right.
Memorization.
So
Nice.
that's all. I just wanted to take a little pause.
Oh, just rub it in a little bit
to
more
double
in my
down
face. Yeah.
on my presuppositions.
Yeah.
From the last episode.
From the last
you mean.
episode.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
so take his opinions of someone who has not read the book very strongly.
I mean, I also have the strong opinion that Stephen King is a wildly overrated author, despite having never read any of his books and only seeing 2 movies that his work's based on. And one of them is objectively not based on the book.
That's very true.
So
Good work.
I reserve the right to have strong, uninformed opinions.
Use it wisely.
Use it wisely. And don't hurt yourself.
With great opinions comes great responsibility.
Irresponsibility.
Ah.
Third party perspective. Do you think
boy.
that my assumptions about what this book is likely to entail are probably correct, given
Given absolutely no other prior information
just the
besides
titles of this
how
of the
mad you
series?
just were.
I didn't bring it with me.
No, I mean, I think that it sounds interesting, and I think there is, I don't know, when it comes to American history, or even just when it comes to like the way we live events in our lives, right? It's like there's your perspective, there's my perspective, and there's the truth, right? So, I mean, I guess my initial gut reaction of hearing that Jeff is reading a book about someone retelling American history from a marginalized people's perspective, I hope that it would be a good read. My optimist in me wants to give the benefit of the doubt of like, hopefully this will be very
Balanced and
informative. Yes. And bring me a different perspective of events that I was not taught in history before, or, you know, wasn't taught in fuller depth, you know, because at the same time too, like, to credit our educators and like my public school education, like, there's only so many things that we can cover in American history. Right. So it's just like, unless you take specific things of like, we are analyzing this certain 50-year span in American history for the next, I don't know, you know, however long a
2
semester
weeks.
is. Hopefully more than that. Like
an hour a day for the
months,
next 2 weeks.
You know, like from August to December. Then we can get into more like, my eyes were opened when I took AP US history my junior year of high school, because my history teacher went into so much depth of just things that like I had never learned about before. So anyways, all of that to say, the optimist in me hopes that it would be something that is just bringing up like, hey, here are just things that you probably didn't get to learn about in history from whatever marginalized people group the one you're specifically thinking about is. What?
I don't know. That just struck me really funny. Whatever marginalized, whatever that one was.
Blink twice if you're okay, Nelson.
I'm great.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm speaking as like a woman of color myself, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like I don't know. I'm painting with a broad brush here, but
BROAD.
I'm trying to be intentional to read books that don't just
a broad brush.
yeah,
I'm trying to read books that are not nationalistic. I get every book I'm going to read, especially someone that's modern day, writing about someone that was around 2,000 years before or whatever. Like, there's going to be errors. It's like, I'm not saying the book is foolproof. I shouldn't have to defend this, but I'm trying to read different perspectives. Just like I don't want to, every book about mental health that I'm reading, I don't want it to be from a Christian author. Like, I want to make sure like I'm reading a wide spectrum of, it was usually a trigger word for him. I didn't know if he was going to start laughing again.
Wide?
I said spectrum. No. I'm just
Is that a fat joke, Jeff?
Whatever marginalized thing
You fat
Nelson wants to
autist,
be.
wide spectrum.
I'm trying to be intentional by
Dare
reading
you?
by reading books that are not from a specific bias. Like
Sure.
So I'm not reading all Christian authors, all African American authors, all I'm trying to broaden who's feeding into my mind versus just reading one category of informants. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get
it's like, I get the book itself is like, there's going to be inaccuracies. No, I'm not educated on these things to know which is correct and which is not, but we mentioned,
I'm just enjoying busting your balls.
I know. And sometimes it gets a little too much. But I enjoy books that aren't glorifying America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, because like this
sympathetic
day
to that.
this day and age, just the glorification of America, it's getting redundant. Like it's getting too much. And I like that this book is not optimistic about how we started. And it's refreshing.
Yeah, good.
In an angsty way.
Good.
So anyways, I have not
Dark
finished
comedy.
it yet. You should read it, Nelson, and then give me your opinion, because now it doesn't matter.
Okay, when you're done with it.
Cool.
It's a deal. Coco, 2017, 1 hour, 45 minutes. It's got co-directors Lee Unkrich and Adrian Molina, rated PG. We have not done any other movies as of yet that came out in 2017.
Is this our newest?
No. 2022 is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That makes sense.
2015 was Inside Out. That was the one I was going to notate. Was our last Pixar movie was 2 years prior to this one. 2010 was How to Train Your Dragon. 2019 was Ford v Ferrari. Hamilton's 2020, but technically that was recorded years before. So that one's kind of weird. Inside Out is ranked 160, and it was back when we did the episode. That has not changed from this episode. This one, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. This one ranks 74.
That's right.
So this one is ranked higher than Inside Out.
Good.
On the IMDb Top 250. And before I get into other facts, I just have was this based on any book or anything? Was there any?
No, Coco is based on an original idea by somebody at Pixar.
Nice. Good for them.
It's somebody without a Hispanic name, by the way. That's like Ulrich.
Unkrich, right? Is it Unkrich? Unkrich?
It could be. I already
Because
closed
that's
the
one of the
tab.
directors. That's okay. That's one of the directors. So, a couple notes as we get into this. The two directors, Lee Unkrich has done Toy Story 3, Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc., Toy Story 2, and he had a small roster when it came to directing.
Great movies, though.
Adrian Molina has done Coco and a new Pixar movie coming out next year. So this was his first film that he's directed or co-directed or any type of directing. So, and the next one he's doing is another Pixar.
Is it Elio?
Elio, yeah.
Cool.
Which I was not familiar with that one because I know I know it's not Pixar, but Wish is coming out next month.
Yes.
Elementals just came out, which is Pixar.
Is that any good?
Oh, that's another one that I just watched.
Okay, I've not watched Elementals yet.
Any good?
Yeah, it's Elemental. But
Leviosa. Did you like it?
I did.
Lindsay
I think,
loved it. I have not seen it.
Yeah, is it Pixar? Is Elemental Pixar? Pixar just has been very underwhelming to me. Because what was the last one? Was it Soul that was before?
Soul, yeah.
I didn't really like Soul.
I like the jazz and I like the
Elemental was-
music in that movie.
yeah.
Soul is
I like-
audibly fun.
I like the sound of Elemental. It was good. I mean, it was cute. I think it was. I'd watch Elemental. Well, I have watched Elemental way more than I've watched Soul. Like I've already watched
Because
Elemental
you enjoyed it or
twice.
because the kids enjoy it?
Both. Yeah, I really liked it. My daughter really likes it. She says, I want to watch the Waterboy movie, which I'm like, wait a second. We're
You're
not
like,
talking
okay.
about Adam
Sandler.
Sandler,
Yeah.
right?
Get in there. What-
You can do it.
Anyways,
So yeah, Elio, is it Elio or Elio?
Elio.
Elio
I think.
struggles to fit in until he's transported by aliens and becomes the chosen one to be Earth's galactic ambassador, while his mother Olga works on the top secret project to decode alien messages.
I'm very excited because it looks like he has an eye patch. So I don't know if he doesn't have an eye or if he just has a patched eye. And when I was a kid, I had a lazy eye and I had to have an eye patch. So I just really love representation.
I feel so seen.
I know.
Even when I can't.
I want to give my inner child just a hug.
This movie had quite a big roster that I was familiar with as far as cast goes. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just
Just thinking about how when I was in middle school, there was a kid with an eye patch, and I was jealous.
no.
My mom gave me
eye patches are awesome.
My mom gave me like a black eye patch. So the doctor just gave me like a flesh colored Band-Aid to stick on my eye.
Yeah.
And it was awful. It was awful. It was like I was in preschool, I think. Anyways, my mom tried to make it better by giving me a black eye patch. She was like, "Now you can be like a pirate." Like, I don't want to be a pirate, Mom.
Best day ever.
But now they like have really cute like things for eye patches.
Yeah.
And like this was, I had a flesh colored one.
Yeah,
and-
Dan Crenshaw's got some wild eye patches too.
Do you still have your pet parrot?
Do I have How dare you? Anyways.
All right. So the cast of Coco, Anthony Gonzalez, who played Miguel, the main star in this movie, not really done much because he was the main cast. I didn't want to mention the main actor, voice actor. Gael Garcia Bernal, who plays Hector, I probably didn't, was in Werewolf by Night, which was last year's Marvel's kind of Halloween
Yeah, that was
release.
a good one. Was
He's
he
really good.
was he the main guy?
He, I just have Werewolf
Let me see
by
a
Night.
picture of him.
Oh my goodness, it's such a good. Okay, so it's him.
Yeah, it's him.
But in Werewolves by Night, he played the Jack Russell. So whatever.
Oh, the
character-
terrier.
Sure. Benjamin
Little dog breed humor for you.
Benjamin Bratt. Benjamin Bratt, with a B, played Ernesto de la Cruz, the villain of the story. He was a
Spoilers.
character in Doctor Strange. He was in Despicable Me, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And what I originally know him for is Miss Congeniality, the love interest of Sandra Bullock in the first Miss Congeniality. I don't have him on the screen.
That's fine.
Do you want to see him?
Nah,
Okay.
I'm all right.
All right.
Just imagine Sandra Bullock. Close enough.
No, they look significantly different.
Richard
you're,
Gere.
you're thinking of Michael Caine. Gabriel Iglesias was in this movie. He played a clerk. Just a quick cameo. Cheech Marin from Cheech and Chong is also in this. Most recently, he was in Muppets Mayhem for the cameo.
Yeah.
From the Spy Kids, he was also in The Lion King, the original Lion King. And then you've got the hero of Pixar, John Ratzenberger.
That's right.
He was the skeleton. He was just a real quick cameo, like most of his. Well, like about half of his characters in Pixar are cameos. The other half are reoccurring roles.
I think this was his shortest line too, because he just said gracias.
Correct. Yeah. So he was a skeleton with braces. Now he's not been in every Pixar film, but he's been in most. Lines differed because I guess there's some that was uncredited or like was just I couldn't find definitive facts about which ones he wasn't in because there was some uncredited stuff that he was in. And I may have gotten pressed for time looking that up, so I just kept going. He was in an episode of Captain Planet. He was also in Superman 1 and 2, the originals with Keanu.
Still Ratzenberger?
Christopher Reeves. This is Ratzenberger. And this is what I did not know about Ratzenberger, which I don't know if this came up when we talked last time. This is the only movie we've talked. No, this is the second movie this is the fourth movie that he's been in that we've done on this podcast. He was in The Empire Strikes Back. He played just one of the engineers on the Death Star.
You mentioned Cheers, right?
Cheers, yeah. Cheers was, yeah.
Like that's his breakout.
Correct. But yeah, Superman, Empire Strikes Back, almost all of Pixar, Captain Planet, and he also was in Spirited Away. So 5 movies. Wow. He's been in 5 movies we've done so far on this podcast. He voiced one of the U.S. characters of Spirited Away.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was all the cast I recognized in this movie.
You sounded so much more sincere for me.
I love this line.
I'm having a hard time impressing you today, Nelson.
Yeah, well.
You're walking home. I'll drop you off at your driveway.
Yeah.
You just got to walk inside. Yeah. IMDb, it's 8.4 out of 10. Currently 74th on the top 250.
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes, it's 97% and audience 94%.
Yeah. With the IMDb, it debuted at 44.
Wow.
Rallied to 30 within that same year. And then it fell to the mid-60s within 6 months, and then fell to mid-70s by summer 2020, and it just kind of rode out there.
Okay. What was the budget on this movie?
It's an estimated budget of 175 to 225 million.
That's a huge gap.
I know.
How do they not know that?
I don't know. And then since then, because of inflation, so just since 2017, that 175 becomes 220. And that 225 becomes 283. And that's the result of money printing.
Yeah, you say that every episode.
I know.
You probably say next week too, right? Yeah.
And it's not any one administration's fault, it's every administration's fault.
Mm-hmm. Something we do now with our episodes is a peanut gallery. What do we got for the peanut gallery from our Patreon subscribers?
So no comments on Coco. However,
all right.
100% of people polled said it's not in their top 250.
Okay. Well, there you go.
There you go.
All right. And we'll get to our answers at the end of this episode. I'm assuming, okay, I've seen this before. Sarah, we know you've seen this before. Was this your first time watching this, Nelson?
No, I've seen this several times. It's maybe been a year or two, but I've seen it a lot.
Okay. Loosely, do you how do you guys feel about this movie? Yay or nay? Just off the cuff here.
I like it.
Okay.
There's some things that jumped out to me that I hadn't seen.
Those are called jump scares.
And it wasn't even lines and stuff that I was watching for. It's so whenever you see the Land of the Dead in the background, there will be negative space and stuff that makes skulls. But it's all in the architecture as well. But you'll see 2 bridges meet and it makes the top of the head, and then there's 2 houses behind the bridges, and that's the eyes, and then some of them are in profile.
So things that you liked then that you noticed this time around.
Yeah, I was that's a really fun detail.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Is this one of your favorites?
Yeah. It's one of my favorites. You can assume that.
This is the second time I've watched it. Mm-hmm. And both times I always remember going, I thought this came out longer ago. It feels older than 6 years. I feel 2017 doesn't seem that far away, I guess is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And I feel this one's been out longer. But anyways, the first time I watched it, I remember going, wow, that was amazing. Why did I wait so long to watch it? It was awesome. This time was just oh, it was good. I still got very emotional at the end. Mm-hmm. That one still got me with the guitar and Coco, him singing to Coco. Yeah, I may or shed a tear or 3 there.
Or 5.
Yeah. But the rest of it, just the first time I watched it, I remember being captivated by the songs of it. This, I had a hard time getting into it this time. I don't know why. I still enjoyed it. it wasn't what I was expecting knowing I saw it before.
Huh. And that's so interesting because probably the last time that you saw it, you didn't have your daughter.
No, but I did. We did have a child in our house when I watched it.
Okay.
We were fostering at the time. So,
Okay.
so it was still, we were in that parental stage of our journey. It just hit differently. Not in a bad way, but just like it was okay. It was good. I still enjoyed it. But.
Yeah. I realized pretty early on that I had confused it with Encanto.
Oh.
Because he's like talking about how his great-great-grandmother like started a shoe business. And I was like, it's weird. It doesn't really come up again in the movie. And then, like 2 seconds later, I was like, no, Nelson, you're thinking of the wrong movie.
They don't live in a magic house? Yeah, vastly
Where's that singing
different.
girl?
Now, do they stay?
Oh my
is
goodness,
Coco?
vastly different. Nelson.
That's
I'm
brown people.
I'm so mad at you right now.
Every Monday.
Like
Is-
even just like the driving, like
Yeah.
the original couple is vastly different. Like
Yeah, they're not even from the same Latin American country.
not
like,
even that. Yeah,
No,
I mean, I
it's
could give you a pass
just my
on that,
implicit
I
racism.
guess, but
It's a Disney people
Coco
movie
is
about
Mexico,
Hispanics.
right?
correct.
It's
Yeah.
never quite stated like what city or town they're from, but like
No.
it
Well,
is.
no, it does say
it is
it-
Mexico.
It does talk about the name of the town. I don't know if it's a real town.
No,
Okay.
it was a fictionalized town, but yeah, they.
Okay.
I mean, they explicitly say whatever it is, Mexico.
And then
Tijuana.
in Encanto is
Colombia.
Colombia.
Colombia. Yes.
Also in
So-
a fictional town.
Now, and here's my 2 cents. If now that we're comparing the two, which I
That
wasn't,
wasn't even a joke.
I wasn't going to bring up the
I was
two.
just gonna say Colombia is a fictional place.
I'm not convinced.
All
it's
right,
real.
bring out the map.
Slap happy.
Did you know that Colombia has cocaine addicted hippos that live in the wild?
I think you're thinking
terrifying.
of the bears that we have here in America.
That's the one. And he
I watched
died.
the documentary about that.
Cocaine
I prefer
bear, not a documentary.
Encanto over this. If I had to choose,
Yeah, if I could only have one Disney movie about Hispanics.
stop. Nelson. What?
Redact
You're in a different vibe today.
I'm married to a
You're a little
Guatemalan. I can
more-
get away with a
A
lot.
little more antsy today. I will take both of these films, but if I had to pick one, I think Encanto. No, I mean Lin-Manuel Miranda is a genius. But yeah, no, this one's more. I like the colors in this one a lot more than Encanto. Like if to continue the comparison, like I love the neon creatures. I love like the nightlife of this. There's not much nightlife in Encanto. Like it's all during the day
Yeah.
for the most part. Like I like the colors and the vibrancy of that stuff. Like and I appreciated that. And I still appreciate it this time around as well too. Like I was expecting that and that met expectations. Just the world building.
aesthetic?
Yeah.
Cool. What? Nothing. You tell me to rein it in. I rein it in. You're like, what's your problem?
But you're staring at me like I just
I had a beer and a cookie. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
man.
I'm a loose cannon.
Anywho.
Just a wild and crazy guy.
Well, let's dive a little deeper here. So what are some of the biases you guys picked up on this film?
One of the major ones, and it starts as a thing that's aspirational, and then the movie focuses on how that can become an ugly thing, is success doesn't come easy. You have to be ready to do whatever it takes to seize your moment. And it starts as an aspirational thing, and through the exact same character, you see how it can be a very ugly thing.
I saw that in a different thing because like I remembered that De La Cruz was the bad guy. So like I kind of watching again, I knew where the story was going. And when I saw the seize your moment part again, like for me, like it kind of brought up that idea of like even if you make a wrong choice, and I'm speaking from a faith perspective now, just in this specific instance, like God can still take that and redeem it. So so even if you do the wrong thing, or like you seize the moment, even if it's coming from wrong advisors, like it can still be redeemed. There's still ways to redeem your choices and actions, if not through us, through God and stuff. So I kind of took it that way as like, yeah, he probably shouldn't have followed, De La Cruz. He's not a great guy, but because he had his family, because he had his beliefs in this movie and stuff, and he held on to those, he was able to redeem something that was wrong, even if it was a wrong choice he made. So that's kind of how I interpret that seize the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very interesting seeing like all the different characters and the way that they chose to. I think another theme that went with Seize Your Moment was follow your heart,
Yeah.
which
is deceitful
we can-
above all else.
Oh, but I'm circling back to that, Nelson. But the follow your heart and seize your moment ideas for Miguel, like initially seizing his moment was disobedience, right? It was, I don't want to be a part of my family. Like they're holding me back. I want to play music. And, he goes in, steals the guitar and gets thrust into the, dead world and all of that. And then eventually it comes around to seizing his moment, following his heart is that reconciliation in his family, right? Where he realizes, okay, family has to come first, even if that means that my passions have to come second. It doesn't mean that they're not important, but the most important thing is my family.
Well, in this case, it wouldn't even be his passions coming second. It would be never come back to again.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, at the very end, he was like, I'll give it all up. Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, and then for his great-great-grandmother, Mama Imelda, for her...
Hector's wife, right?
That's right.
Yes, yeah. So the original,
Odd couple.
Matriarch,
yeah. With her, it was unforgiveness and bitterness, right? It was like seizing her moment. As soon as her husband left her, didn't come back, she's like, okay, I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps and learn how to make shoes and never look at music again.
Bootstraps.
Yeah.
Bootstraps.
Yeah. So, and the way that she passed that unforgiveness and bitterness down, like that is a whole theme that I hope we get into because that is so prevalent, I think, in Latino culture. Latinx.
Latinx, that's
I
right.
will never. And then for Ernesto de la Cruz, yeah, seizing his moment and following his heart turned to murder and greed.
Yeah.
And the way that the aspirations of your heart can taint what that looks like was very interesting throughout the film, I think. But I think that there's always, like you were saying, like I think from a faith perspective, it's realizing, okay, in Christ, like all things can be redeemed and reconciled. Like for Hector, I think that's a perfect example too of someone who sure might have left his family in hopes of fame, but try to do the right thing, try to get back to them. And, eventually that became restored.
This movie represents throughout the whole thing of generational, not necessarily trauma, but generational like grudges.
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I
because,
think
like-
it could be a trauma.
Because like Miguel had nothing to do with his great grandparents. Like it's like
Right.
it's like enough time has passed to where like there should be that ability to give something another try. Like and it's crazy, like he is so disconnected from the trauma that happened with Hector and the music, his murder. It's just fascinating how like I don't know if I can think of any examples in my specific family. Like there's probably things my parents are protecting me from that I'm not aware of that my grandparents have done and stuff, but for the stuff that I'm aware of, I'm like, okay, but I think you see that sometimes often like families try to protect the next generation from something, even if it's socially not as bad or as taboo as people put a label on it, or like it's just like the effect of one person, but they're allowing that person to just still have a hold. Like the fact that you're holding that grudge means that person's wrongdoings are still in effect versus
Yes.
just letting go of the grudge and letting go of forgiveness of the
Right.
mistake that was made, even though it was a misunderstanding. It just, I don't know. I feel like that's a very common thing that we see today.
Yeah. It's the importance of narrative, right? Yeah. Of like the narrative that this original matriarch decided to spin was my husband has left me and I have to raise my daughter on my own. And because of that, I'm done with music. I'm done with the hope that he's coming back and I have to take care of myself. Mm-hmm. And that's very admirable for a single mom. Of course, like what else are you going to be able to do besides provide for yourself? Like,
right.
That's my story, not me personally. like I'm a single mom right now. My mom was a single mom, like for a bit. And like I watched her start over with nothing and she had 2 kids to take care of. And that's an admirable thing. And I think especially for like, again, Latin women, I think there's that pride in that of, I don't need no man. Like I'm, I can do this on my own. But it's that narrative that email that I decided to pass down of we will not talk about this person again. We will not see it from a different perspective. That can be dangerous because like you said, there was her perspective, Hector's perspective, and the truth. And there was a whole other truth there that their family wasn't able to heal from. Yeah. So I would say that that's a trauma. I think maybe little t trauma, but, you know, trauma of the sense of like, okay, these two parents have this daughter and the father's not there anymore. And that's a trauma for the wife and it's a trauma for Coco and even for her, right? Of like, she kept all of her dad's poems. She kept his letters and even the picture of her or of him that she was never allowed to bring up. She could not, because of the sake of the narrative, make her own ofrenda. She couldn't, you know, pull out this picture that she had of him. And that's a lot.
Even after Imelda had passed.
Even after, the source of that. But because, and again, this is something that's so prevalent, I feel like, at least, I mean, I've seen it in my own family, where it's just like, if a matriarch or a patriarch says so, that is like, I don't know, it's the Bible, you know, like that is the ultimate authority. Yeah. And you don't question that. And even after that person has passed, the fact that it's like, nope, this is the narrative that we have been told to believe. And God bless this person who isn't with us anymore, but is the narrative that we're going to continue to believe out of respect for them. And that's so, it can be so dangerous.
Even if like there's a huge gap between the trauma and the affected party, if you're still holding on to that trauma and you're continuing to live within that mindset of that trauma is fresh, that trauma is current, that trauma is our reality, it takes that lifestyle that's continuing to move on and just turns into a fear-based lifestyle. So even if the trauma that is not relevant to the parties involved, they're now living in fear that trauma will happen again, even though like the factors aren't the same. You know, stuff is it changes. It goes from trauma to fear-based mentality, and then you're just living in fear in hopes that trauma doesn't happen again. And then you're missing parts of your life. You're missing on aspects of the ability to live because you're holding on to this idea that this could remove life from us, but when really holding on to that is actually the act of removing life. Yeah. Which this movie talks about because, you know, he literally goes to the land of the dead.
Yeah.
If I'm able, Sarah, I want to ask some questions here. Like, growing up, did you guys do a lot of Hispanic culture, lifestyle? Was DA, I can't say it correctly.
Dia de Muertos?
Yeah. Was that something you guys acknowledged? No. Okay.
So it is funny. So my parents, my biological father is Mexican and my mom is Puerto Rican. They got divorced when I was 6 and I stopped seeing my father when I was around 12. We would visit his family probably once a year. Like we'd make like the trek to go and visit them. They lived out of state. But yeah, no, never like, and he, I think would have been maybe like second generation. Okay. So there wasn't a lot of like tradition instilled on either side. So it's funny because part of me might feel a little bit of imposter syndrome on this episode because like I don't speak fluent Spanish.
And your name isn't really Sarah.
Yeah, I'm just a sham, Nelson. I don't actually have kids. I'm not really
an imposter.
Yeah.
This episode is all AI.
You don't have imposter syndrome. You're not even good enough to have an imposter syndrome.
Anyways, so not really a ton of like, I would say, tradition from either side. So it was funny like watching Coco from the sense of like learning things about Dia de Muertos, but also still being able to see like echoes of my own childhood and themes I think that still are there, even though like the heritage isn't. So did not celebrate the Day of the Dead.
Yeah, I've not met anyone that does have that more reverence type of opinion of this holiday or this event and stuff.
Yeah,
so I was just curious.
It's also nothing like what's done in the movie.
Right, ghosts aren't real.
So, like in Guatemala, it's a pretty big deal among the Catholic communities, and basically, like you get in Guatemala specifically, you get fiambre, which is this really gross pickled salad with beets and bits of cold meat in it.
You had me a pickle, but then lost me a cold meat.
And you get a big bowl of fiambre, and you take that to the cemetery where your ancestors are buried, and you share stories about them. And you eat this gross salad, and they all get super, super excited about it. And I just don't get this. It's not that good salad. I'm sorry. And in each Latin country, it's going to be a very different thing, but it's a largely Catholic tradition. The colorful animals are a more recent addition in Mexico. And the Dia de los Muertos, where you like paint your face up, like that's like not even really associated. Like American understanding of Mexican, specifically like not even just Latin traditions, but Mexican specifically, like we just like hodgepodge and like mash it all together. Like
Because it's not, this day doesn't fall on Halloween. It's the day after.
No.
day after
right?
Halloween.
Yeah, because
All
Halloween is
Saints
the Day
in
of
English.
Day of the Dead. Then the next day is All Saints Day, which
Yeah.
is, So in the research I've done, and correct me if I'm wrong, is November 1st is usually Dia de los Muertos.
There you go.
Dia
Butcher.
de los Muertos.
Yeah, so that's usually November 1st.
Yeah.
And so All Saints Day is, the spooky side of it.
Yeah. American perception of Dia de los Muertos is a lot like Cinco de Mayo. To Mexicans, like Cinco de Mayo is just the 5th of May. And if you ask most Americans what is Cinco de Mayo celebrate, they would say it's Mexican independence, but that's November 15th. We have very little understanding about cultures outside of our
love a
borders.
good party.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I love tacos and margaritas as much as the next guy.
And I don't understand what putting mayo in a sink does.
Yeah.
Does the movie depict authentically a Mexican's perspective of this day? Or do they even take it? Obviously, not the dead side of the things, but the way they honor the memorials, the parties in the cemetery. Like, does all that stuff happen? Is that accurate to Mexican? Does anyone know here at the table?
I don't know a lot of Mexicans.
Okay.
I know a lot of Guatemalans. I know a lot of people in Honduras. All of the Mexicans I know are American immigrants.
I know the writers of this film went to Oaxaca, Mexico,
Yeah.
and spent some time there and studied,
Yeah.
and stuff. So like I imagine it's accurate to a T.
It's
So, like,
really good as far as like capturing the aesthetics. Something that's really interesting about Latin culture is even though there's a lot of misogyny and machismo, is kind of the word they use for
That's
it.
Spanish.
Thank you. They have a lot of machismo there. Like, so men are superior to women in ways that I definitely don't see eye to eye with them on. But interestingly, like, it's a matriarchal society. Women run the families. And you do see that in this movie.
Run the world.
No.
Queen Bee.
No, it's actually illegal for women to be president. So, look it up.
No. So what I was going to say then, if all I know about this day, I've learned from the movie Coco. So
Yeah.
take this with a small grain of salt, the smallest grain you can find. I kind of admire that
So salty.
appreciation of the past. As someone who loves history, I love doing like my family genealogy. As weird as it sounds, I like going to cemeteries and looking at the dates and tombstones. Just like,
Digging 'em up.
no, I'll never admit to that.
Grave robbing. Dabble in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Did you see this new ring I got? I'm so fascinated about how the past does continue to affect the future. Like generations before will pass generations beyond me. Like, and I love learning about like how that's happened already. Lindsay hates it, but anytime we go near a cemetery that's on my radar that I know has a plot, a tombstone, a mausoleum of someone that I've studied or read in a book, we have to stop. And
Have you
Lindsay
been-
hates
cool.
it. You can research. I'm going to keep talking.
I got a great thing. You're going to love this.
Okay, go on.
Because it has to do with cemeteries. There's one near us.
There's a lot near us, actually.
There's a specific one near us.
There's a couple.
Yeah. Resting Place of Giants in Seville. Have you heard of this?
No.
August of 1889, Captain Marvin Van Buren Bates, formerly of the Confederate Army, was grieving. His wife had passed away, and he had ordered her casket from a manufacturer in Cleveland, Ohio. Although Bates was provided precise dimensions for the coffin, his telegram created great consternation in the coffin maker's office. When the coffin arrived, Bates was furious. He informed the designers that the casket was far too small. Bates' original request had been completely accurate. 3 days later, a proper-sized coffin arrives for the remains of Anna Haining Swan Bates, who had stood close to 8 feet tall.
Wow.
Bates, also over 7 feet tall, visited the grave in the days that followed. He felt that such a woman needed some type of great memorial. A memorial that, like his beloved Anna, would be unique and beautiful. So these two people were, at the time, the tallest couple in the world. They were part of the P.T. Barnum Traveling Museum, and they're buried in Seville, Ohio.
Wow.
So yeah, you're talking about interesting
I will
graves.
definitely check that out.
I knew you'd be interested.
This is the greatest show.
Yeah.
Come see our freaks.
Giants. I've not seen that movie either.
You've never seen
it's
The
so
Greatest
good.
Showman.
It's so good.
Jeffrey. How have you not seen The Greatest Showman?
I got singing freaks.
Don't you love Hugh Jackman?
I like Zendaya.
Huge Ackman.
I like Zac Efron.
Hugh Jackman.
I like singing. I like the
Hugh
circus.
Jackman.
There's elephants.
There's a woman with a beard. What more could you ask for?
I've got you, Nelson.
Jeff, you need to watch it.
I know. So
Please watch
He's not a big musical guy.
no, it's not the first on my list. But
He
anyway,
doesn't want to watch a movie about freaks.
anyways, I appreciate the reverence of cemeteries, just in an
Yes.
odd, weird way. I get how
Yeah.
it sounds
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
the moments in this movie, like where they were having there was something interesting like about that. Like I like intentionally seeking out times to go and look at the past.
I only know about what Latin Catholic families do on this day from being told. I've never joined any of them for this. But from my Protestant Latin friends, I've heard accusations of that it borders on like veneration and ancestor worship. And so there's a handful of things that when Spain colonized Latin America, they were just like, oh, those practices that you have, yeah, that's fine. That's definitely Catholic too. And like they just kind of like folded in. So that's why like Latin Catholicism is so very different from even North American Catholicism. So I don't know to what degree this becomes ancestor worship, or if it's just like a
Honoring.
and also I don't even know where the line is, right? Like at what point are you too invested in your heritage?
Yeah, I think there is something that's lost in American culture of understanding where you've been, you know, and yeah, I think that part of the movie, the sentiment of, you know, it's important to remember your past, I think is good. But yeah, that is an interesting perspective of, but how much? Because you don't want to glorify people, you know, but at least to be able to look back and know where you've been. And again, the narrative, right, of your family, like, and even tying it back to Jeffrey's book, like, just the different perspectives. I have no idea. I need to go back and listen to your other thing about this book. But the idea of the book of presenting a different perspective on a history. Yeah. Like, I think that's important for our own families, right? Of like, okay, let's look back at the different perspectives of what we believe to be true or gospel to our family, you know?
Yeah, warts and all.
Yeah. And what traumas or, I don't know, like, just, I can't get over how in the movie, it's just this root of bitterness, right, that has been passed down. And it's not that Miguel's family, like, I guess, and in the beginning of the movie, before all of this stuff has happened, like, it's not like they're a bitter family, like, they're a happy, close-knit family, but they've prided themselves in the fact of, we don't need music, we don't like music.
Imagine marrying
music.
into that family.
Yeah, of
that's
like,
insane.
You've got to get rid of all of this stuff. But
at the end of the movie, when it was 1 year later, the two other young ones, the guy that had the song, they both had instruments and
one's playing an accordion,
well.
one's playing a fiddle.
So that was impressive. In 1 year, they went from 0 to 60. Like, so that was impressive. But yeah, because like, that would
not a lot
not
to do in Mexico.
Like that would. It'd be very hard to like enter in a family like that. Like, oh, can we turn the radio on? Even can we watch?
Yes,
can we watch music?
political
so
talk
long
shows
you
only.
work,
Right, like-
you can't do that.
Yes,
like-
but podcasts only. That's all we
Like,
listen to. in this house.
can I tap a pen and a beat on a desk and get
Nothing.
sent out in the hall at school because it's like just like can anything
Can these
with a
be
rhythm?
dancing shoes?
Yeah, like
Town of Footloose.
Yeah, I've not seen Footloose. I know. I know.
Anyways.
There's so many movies I have not seen yet.
Nobody put the baby in the corner.
That's
Dirty
big in the city. Do you think that this movie is fully solved just by the act of forgiveness? Do you think this movie is summed up with forgiveness, or do you think there's something?
So
where is I
one of
gonna
the
go with
things
this?
that drives Jen crazy when we're watching a movie or television show is how much the plot could be resolved and tensions could be resolved if people just communicated. And oftentimes in movies and TV shows, because in the real world, people aren't great communicators, but in movies and TV shows, they're particularly bad about it. One of Jen and my favorite shows is All Creatures Great and Small.
All creatures.
And yeah, so
Same thing.
it's written by a veterinarian from England, and he wrote a series of books, and each book was a different part of that song. Each title was. But it's just a perfectly wholesome show, and people communicate well, and things go right. And we were watching it the other night, and I was like, "Oh, that guy's definitely going to steal all that money," and he didn't, and I totally misjudged it. That wasn't where the plot was going. It was just because of that's normally what would happen. In this movie, so much would have been resolved just with normal communication that you'd expect. Yeah. You know, Ismelda dies, Coco's probably going to be like, you know what? I'm putting Dad's picture in the mantle. Yeah. You know? When Miguel meets Hector, he'd probably be like, here's a picture of my family. I need to go see De La Cruz. And Hector would be like, actually, that's me. And of course, he's not going to believe it, but that would be a different tension to resolve. Right. Mm-hmm. You know, somehow in all of the years Ismelda's been dead, the two of them have never met in the City of the Dead. It's just a lot of things that for me was just this would be resolved with normal communication, not even good communication, just normal things that happen.
But how much too, though, of that happens in our families? How much in our own family dynamic it could be resolved by communication? Sometimes it might be just communication in general. Like you said, not even good communication, just communication, just talking. Yeah. But also good communication, right? Learning those things. Yeah. And again, it's the power of narrative that gets handed down, that it's even after death. And maybe this goes into the veneration of, your ancestors of we cannot go against what our matriarch has set because it's disrespectful for her, to her. It doesn't honor the sacrifice. I think that's huge too, right? Yeah. Of I don't want to disrespect the sacrifice of my mom, so I'm not going to speak up. Yeah. I think when you look at Coco and you just look at this family, my heart just breaks for them. And again, maybe it's because of this season that I've been in the past year of reliving my own stuff. But it's just how much of the stories that we tell ourselves or tell other people continues on a narrative that robs us of forgiveness, robs us of fuller life, and how much can be resolved in our own families by just simple communication. And to go back to your question, Jeff, of is this movie however, what did you say? You said,
what was that thing you said? What was your question?
Is the solution to this whole movie does the whole story hinge on forgiveness, or is there other parts? And I think, Nelson, there's lack of communication. Forgiveness wouldn't even have to be a thing if they would just communicate.
Forgiveness is absolutely important, but
could they have avoided the need of having to plead for forgiveness, or could they have avoided the tragic moments within their family?
Right.
Or is it inevitable?
Yeah.
For them to be in this situation.
Again, from Imelda's point of view, her husband just didn't come back. Right. What story did she tell herself to justify why he didn't come back? She never explored he's dead.
What if he choked on chorizo?
Yeah, or someone poisoned his drink because he was on his way home to me.
He would never choke on chorizo.
But
he must have been murdered.
But it's there was never, I guess, necessarily that opportunity for her to be able to forgive him, right? Maybe the sense of she could have just put it away and maybe not let bitterness overtake her life. Maybe that would have been different. I did appreciate how when Imelda and Hector like reunite, how he's like, you know, I can't remember the word, like the wording of it, but basically he asks her, you know, do you forgive me? And she's like, I don't know if I can forgive you, but I can help you, like be remembered. And I think that is that's still so powerful, because I think that is not the, you know, maybe Disney or like fictionalized version of forgiveness. Like, I think, you know, when we're often told stories, right, it's like, here's, you know,
forgive and forget.
Yeah. And for her, I think that was such a real part of healing of, I don't know if I'm in the place to forgive you yet, but I know that you don't deserve to off into, like into oblivion. So I'll help you and we can figure out our stuff later on. Like, I think that was so important. So I do think that it's one of the main resolutions of the storyline is, like, how important is your forgiveness, but also that forgiveness is a journey, you know, like there's so much of communication that has to happen of her saying, well, I thought that you just were a bum and you left us. And he's like, I wanted to come home to you, you know, but got choked up on the way there. So just be very passionate about Coco.
Yeah. There's this one's more, I think, a really great line that like anybody that's spent some time in less affluent areas of Latin America has experienced to some degree, which she says, never name a street dog, they'll follow you forever. There's a video that Steve-O made. He went to, I think it was in Chile.
The theologian?
Yeah. And he met a street dog and he fed it and he brought it inside the hotel and he wasn't allowed to, but he did anyway, and bathed it. And then like the next day, like the street dog went and found its street dog friends and brought it, and they like he fed a bunch of them. And like this has been his dog for years now. Like,
wow.
And it's funny because like in Latin America, you know, you'd go hike in Guatemala, you go hike a volcano, for example. And like at every
casual.
Yeah, well there's so many of them there, like that's just a thing people do. It's Jen's biggest complaint is that we don't have enough volcanoes in the Midwest. Anyway, every like spot along the trail that you would stop where people are like selling knickknacks and stuff, there's always like 20 street dogs. Yeah. And they would say, hey, give the street dog a bone. So I just thought that was funny. Like, you never name a street dog, they'll follow you forever. And the way Americans or Westerners treat dogs is so different than the way like the majority of the world treats dogs. Did you know there's only one breed of dog that Muslim nomads allow to be with them? They consider dogs to be like basically vermin. But there's one breed of dog called Saluki that they've bred specifically to be these hunting dogs. And they can run down a rabbit until its heart explodes. And then they'll just pick up the rabbit and bring it to you. My dad has a friend who breeds them because they're great racing dogs. And he breeds these dogs. And he's got other dogs in the house as well. But the Salukis are like basically racist to the other dogs. They're like, no, we're better than you. It's just like, and it's like in their genetics to just like look down on all other dog breeds. It's so weird. Anyway, yeah, most cultures treat dogs like vermin, and we are very precious with our dogs. And I just thought that line kind of shone a light on that just in a fun way.
You.
Yeah, I liked it. I've got something of more substance, but I like that line.
Yeah.
I was watching a YouTube video about the movie before you get to substance. Just it was more of just a topical like Easter eggs of the film, not necessarily like breaking down like themes and stuff, but just things you missed, you know, or things you wouldn't have noticed, you know, kind of like the skulls in the background and stuff like.
Miguel is Coco's great grandson, for example. You might have missed that your first time through.
The boy?
Yeah, they're related.
No,
that can't be right.
But
Coco isn't the main character.
There was multiple famous Mexican. Is it Hispanic or Mexican? Like, what's more appropriate?
Follow your heart.
Mexicans.
If they are from Mexico and you know they're from Mexico,
okay,
they're Mexican.
Okay, all right.
If they're from a Spanish-speaking country,
okay,
and you
Hispanic.
don't know their gender, they're Latinx.
Okay. There were multiple Mexican celebrities that have died.
It's
in
awful.
The past
It really is awful.
that were represented in this movie.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, and even more.
Right, like it's like that, but like I wouldn't have known a single one of them if I
knew
didn't
them-
watch the Easter egg breakdown.
I
of
knew
the
them
movie.
because
Like-
when I watched it for the first time with Jen, she was pausing and be like, "Hey, that's so-so," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." It means nothing to me.
I love it.
Frida Kahlo, I was like, I know that one. I recognize that eyebrow.
Yeah, so
It's
the
very illegal.
the
to
famous
impersonate
Mexican
or to
painter.
fake a unibrow. I like
That's
that.
my question about legality in the City of the Dead. Like, these guys are going to live forever as long as people remember them who knew them in life. So, like, prison seems like not really much of a punishment. Also, we know, because it said in the movie, that there's no bathrooms in the City of the Dead. So why'd they bring all this food back? What do they do with it? I'm just really confused. And
plot
also,
holes.
I had some questions about how the economy works there. Like, I got questions.
Carry on, Jeff, with your YouTube video.
There was the famous.
That was
I'm
your
in too deep.
substance.
No, that wasn't it.
What is your government structure here?
Yeah.
Because either it's my paradise because there is none, or this is my.
Here's a good one.
living
Why are
nightmare.
there Aztec ruins in the City of the Dead, but no one could have lived there before photography? Because if drawings were enough to remember somebody, they wouldn't need Hector's photograph. So,
But she wasn't allowed to put her doodle up on the ofrenda. That was the thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, carry on, Jeffrey.
This is great.
I got questions.
And they're justified.
The artist that was designing the outfits for De La Cruz's big sunrise event, she was a famous artist that had passed away from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the luchador wrestler.
Yep.
That was
In Nacho Libre?
in line. Nope, different one. In line to get into the luchador party. He had the mask on. That was representing an actual, what used to be a real human being luchador that has passed. And then there was a couple.
What was his name?
Luchador. And then there
No,
was a couple.
I'm serious.
other-
What's his name? Because the
I don't have that on me.
well, the gold wrestler, the antagonist, sort of Nacho Libre. Also, Ramses is the best.
He wasn't.
Ramses doesn't smile at the party.
That's a real person?
He's an actual luchador, and I'm pretty sure he's passed.
Okay. No, this was like older than Nacho Libre's time.
You know,
I don't think
all of
we've
my
left the
Hispanic
ringer.
friends love Nacho Libre
It's a great
and Jack
movie.
Black.
It's the only other movie I can compare to. It's the
Get
only,
that going out of my
it's
face.
the only other movie that I can compare to Napoleon Dynamite.
Have
Like
you not been baptized? Oh, but I preferred Nacho Libre over Napoleon Dynamite
Yep,
a
any day,
thousand
any day.
times over.
I
1,000 times
ate
over.
some bugs.
I love them both.
I ate some grass. I used my hand to wipe my tears.
I love them both.
And
I
you
think
say if I
Napoleon's
eat these
better.
eggs, I will get eagle powers?
You guys are a lot today. So yeah, I don't think it's
Why
the same.
can't we ever have just like a salad?
Do you not know I have had diarrhea since Easter's?
Where are the cheaps? Where are the spices? Chancho, I need to borrow some sway.
Sometimes a man wears stretchy
Stretchy
pants in his
That's
room.
that's the line
It's
I
for
know.
fun.
That's the line I know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good toast.
If we do this movie off the top 250, we'll
All
have
of
to have
those
you
things
on.
are my favorite things to do too.
I love volleyball. My favorite animal is poopies.
And my favorite color is light tan. No way.
I get to go to bed by myself every
night?
night for the rest of my life. It's the best.
It's the best movie. It's the second best movie ever made, right after Steve Martin's The Jerk.
Oh my gosh, my sides. Anyways, what was your thing of substance then?
I think
I'm
Jeff was
sorry,
saying
Jeff.
Well, you
something.
guys were laughing. El Santo was the famous Mexican wrestler and movie actor.
Yeah, I think that's him.
Claus.
Wait, are you serious?
I think so.
It's El Santo.
Ramses is the best.
Okay, Ramses is different than El Santo.
I love the girl at the party. I love you.
No,
What?
he was portrayed by Silver King, who was a luchador who has passed.
And then a couple of famous Mexican singers and actors from older eras and stuff. I was kind of bummed that like I didn't get those references outside of watching a video that wasn't Coco. You know, like I wish I would have known, like picked up on those little
Sure.
honorings of real living dead people.
Yeah.
If that made sense. Yeah, real living dead people.
Zombies.
So yeah, it's not often that Pixar movies will reference our
Real
world.
people.
Real dead
right.
people.
Well, or real life.
Yeah.
Like it was just cool that those made cameos.
Yeah.
In this way. So
It was fun.
Sid's T-shirt from Toy Story made a cameo.
Yep.
Pizza Planet truck.
Pizza Planet.
That's right.
As
The
I'm reading
Pixar
here,
ball.
Pixar ball, yeah.
because I was looking up, so I was trying to look at the name of the
Buzz, Woody, and Mike Wazowski.
Nemo
Pinatas.
and Dory are in it as well. And the table where he pets all the dinosaurs at the beginning.
Not dinosaurs.
Well, they're not dinosaurs.
Spirit
They're
animals. Spirit guides.
This is coming from PixarFandom.com. I was looking up the wrestler name, and I saw this because this is relevant to a movie we've just done recently. In a scene where Dante wakes up, Jack Torrance's axe from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining can be seen stuck on a tree trunk, and behind it is a red drum, which is a reference to Red Rum murder spelled backwards. So there's a Shining reference in this movie. I didn't see that in the movie.
And
but
who directed The Shining that also directed one of your favorite movies?
There it is.
Clockwork Orange.
Stanley Yelnats.
Clockwork Orange isn't a
Makes it-
director.
Well, no. But
Stanley Yelnats.
Stanley Yelnats III. Best friend to Hector Zeroni
Yes.
appearing in this film.
Sploosh.
But yes, Stanley Kubrick reference.
Yeah.
So there's our tie-in
It
to
is.
Clockwork Orange.
Thank you. So yeah, I was trying. That came up while I was looking up the name of the.
There's also that scene where they strap Miguel down and like they wire open his eyelids.
Yeah. So so you said you had
A thing of substance.
a thing of substance. Yeah, we need more of that. So Nelson, what you got?
So when frame of the picture breaks, Miguel unfolds it and sees, oh, my great whatever grandfather had this guitar. Obviously, he is what's his name? I don't know which character says it to him, but he says, we don't know anything about this man, but whoever he was, he still abandoned his family.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that they don't say our family because these people weren't in the picture yet. He abandoned his family, and that is the condemnation. There's not as close of a friend as I would like, but there's a friend of mine that they recently abandoned their family, wife and kids. And I found out about it months after the fact. And I see their pictures show up on Facebook, and like, I just have a lot of tension in me because there's really nothing I can do about this. There's no way that I can involve myself in a way to make this better. So when it comes to mind, I pray about it. But it's like, that's like one of the biggest scumbag moves that I can't get past.
Yeah. No. I've not experienced anything like that. So yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Doing that. And obviously we know that's not what Hector did, but like,
Right.
that's what they thought for years and years
Right.
and years was that he just left to chase his musical dreams.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, that's not something I can relate to or have close opinions or thoughts or emotions
Yeah.
about. Other than that, yeah, it sucks.
Well,
Yeah.
even just I think the moral presupposition that poses, right? Of just like everyone can agree that this is not a good thing to do,
And
right?
yet still people do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, like you said, it's not even the fact that he did it to our family. It's just, if I
His
picked him
family.
off of the street,
Any guy that would do this to their family.
yeah, isn't worth remembering. Which is,
Or I think in this case, there could be that, but it's also isn't worth emulating.
right.
Shouldn't be somebody you look up to.
Right. Yeah. Which is fair.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's very important for Miguel to understand of like, you don't want to be anything like this guy. And later he finds out you really don't want to be anything
Yeah.
like this guy because of greed and like his selfishness. He murdered your actual great grandfather. It's interesting, that kind of like moral.
Tension.
Yeah. Tension. What is the word that I'm looking for? Absolute truth. The
Okay, yeah.
absolute truth
yes.
that poses of everyone can agree that someone who does this, isn't worth emulating, and maybe it isn't even worth remembering. But I think the part that, like, at least for me, right, like I can get fired up about of like, yeah, that's true. That's such a terrible thing. And I can't understand that from your perspectives as fathers, right? But I could understand it from my perspective as a mother and a child of divorced parents. But the tension then as a Christian is, but no sin is unforgivable, right? Like everyone is still worthy of redemption and reconciliation. And even if Hector wasn't the good guy that he turned out to be, of like, he was trying to get back to his family, just got murdered. Like, even if he was a scumbag who left his family, like he's still worthy of forgiveness. he might not be able to get it by someone on earth. But again, as a Christian, like he's still deserving of that. And I think that's some of the like most difficult conversations that I have with people of, I don't know. My mom loves to watch court TV and she loves to like talk about all these cases and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, why do you want to watch that? Like, it just hurts my stomach, like thinking about that these are real people doing these things. And she's like, they deserve this and da 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 da. And I love to stir the pot of like, but, you know, like, did Christ not die for every sin and every person? And again,
Calvinists would be like, asterisk.
I would say I'm a kitty Calvinist.
Yeah.
I'm not a 5-pointer.
But man, they make some strong points.
They have 5 strong points.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Some strong arguments.
And there's that whole idea, like, say you were Coco. Say you were the direct line of Hector, and you had a bad experience with him, but like you had a good life nonetheless. There could still be that ability to be thankful for him just for the fact that like you wouldn't be here without him. You know, like as simple as it is, and like in trying to find that silver line of like.
Ideally, he wouldn't have left, but the fact that he lived means that I get to.
Yeah. Like it just, it's just that idea of like there's a way to turn it to see the grace in a situation.
Yeah.
Like there is. Like you have to choose to see it.
Yes.
That's wherein lies the hard, almost impossible decision sometimes. But like there is an ability in every situation to see the silver lining.
Yeah.
Lindsay and I have had the conversation a couple times, and it's come up in different ways when we watch different things on media and stuff. But like it all comes down to it's also perspective. Like if you have a child who comes from wealth, comes from parents who have really good jobs, and this kid has everything he wants, but his parents aren't around because they're always working the same time. They're always working all the time, and like so he's got all his money spent. He's got all these cool gadgets. He's got this awesome house. He's got a pool, all this stuff. But like he never sees his parents. Versus the kid who doesn't have much. His parents don't have much. Maybe he only has one parent, or maybe he's with a grandparent. But he spends time with that person, and they have a relationship. They don't have much, but what they do have, there's value there. Like there's perspective to the rich kid, to the kid that feels like he's got everything he needs, except like that relationship is probably more attractive than the toys. But then it just there's that idea, like it's just about perspective. Like they both have something that's valuable. It's just like how are they looking at it, and where are they putting their values? So just that's come out because we've had foster kids and stuff before, and we've had interactions with kids that have shared things that Lindsay and I would perceive as traumatic or rough, or like, oh wow, and they're like, no, and they would explain, no, we got to do this every day, and I'm like, wow, like that brought him or her joy in that moment, and I'm just like, yeah, I guess like it is perspective on how like they perceive it, because like as small as it was or as minimal as it was, that brought them joy in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, and we can't be the decider on what does or does not bring a silver lining or joy to something outside of Jesus Christ. Like outside of that, which we know will bring anyone joy. Like you can't assume that just because they come from a lot doesn't mean that their needs are deeper than someone who doesn't come from anything. But they've got a strong relationship with a family member. They've got their soul needs met.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought this one was really interesting. The way to undo a family curse is with a family blessing. So I don't believe in family curses. I don't really believe in family blessings.
But I think you have to say it 3 times, spin around, and drink a cup of water.
Throw some salt over my shoulder. But I do think it's interesting that they went with this because both those terms come from Scripture, and like if we look at what they mean in their original Aramaic or Hebrew or Greek or wherever they show up, like curse means a bad word and blessing means a good word. Like it's as simple as that. So like the best way to undo a bad word on your family is with a good word on your family. And I just really, I've always found the balance between those two things, and that we consider them opposites, and how simple the concept is behind them really interesting. Like when we look in Scripture and we see somebody giving a blessing to their son or whoever, it's literally just like, I'm going to say something good about your future. And it's as simple as that. And then because of that, when Scripture tells us not to curse others, like it really, like it's like, don't speak badly about people. It's as simple as that. So,
yeah. And again, the power, I think, of generational, like sin, even in Scripture. Of the way that sins of other generations impacts future
Yeah,
generations.
pass on to future generations.
And that's-
under the 5th generation.
And it's the same thing, I think, that you see in Coco, again, of just, the sin of unforgiveness, and maybe not bitterness would be a sin, I guess, but maybe the fact of dwelling and like letting that fester is huge, and just the power of, she wasn't able to forgive him for not coming back because obviously he wasn't physically there, but just the power that she let that have over her, and then the way that she instilled that into her family. And it wasn't until Miguel is able to kind of reconcile that and give the perspective of, no, he was trying to make his way back.
Mm-hmm.
But all what you get with following your heart, that's deceptive and deceitful above all things.
That's
Which Disney movie had Mulan has the Follow Your Heart song. Be true to your heart. 98 Degrees.
True to your heart.
Yeah.
That's Mulan?
Yeah.
True to your
Yep.
heart. It's the
Right,
closing
that's the
song.
end.
Oh, it's in the credits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would he like to stay forever? That's a great movie. Mulan is a fantastic movie. Should be on the top 250.
There's a really great sneaky line in this movie that you could miss if you're not looking for it.
I wasn't
Blink
looking
and you'll
for it.
miss it. Tell me.
Ismelda is scolding Miguel about like when he goes back to the land of the living and music and all that stuff. And he says to her, "It's my life. You already had yours." And I think that's a really great way of framing the tension that like we try to put onto our kids sometimes, what we want them to be. They're going to have to live their own lives. Or you're going to have to let go of the control on that. So
A lot of parents. And,
I see myself doing
I was
it
gonna
with
say,
my
I've
kids.
done it
Yeah.
already, just having a daughter for only a year and a half. Like, there are moments where I try to live vicariously through my daughter doing something.
Yeah.
And I also know as a youth, I know other parents, and I can see it through my moments where my parents have done that as well too, going like, "You should definitely do this. I've always wanted to do this," and I'm like, "Oh, like so." Yeah, I think that's a great thing I didn't pick up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too. What did I have down about another just quote, minor thing, but Miguel tells Imelda, "That's what families are supposed to do, support you, but you never will." And I think that's just, it gets me because I think that this movie does a really good job of showing the tension of something that seems good, but how it can be tainted, right? Which is so many things, again, in scripture and faith and life. I think the tension that we live in as believers, but you have the follow your heart thing, the seize your moment, but then families are always meant to support you. And for him, he wanted to be a musician. And yes, that's not a bad dream or aspiration, but at what point is it okay for your family to stop supporting you? Anyways, I don't have any deeper thoughts on that, I guess, but I just think that that's...
There's a tension in, especially I think more recent Pixar movies, with like guiding children to eschew the guidance of their parents. So we see that in Moana, where it's like everything you need is right here on the island. And listen, I get that the father was ultimately wrong, but like it still doesn't change the point that like they're situating and framing and positioning it so that the father is who's trying to do the best thing that he can think of for his daughter. He doesn't know what's going on, and he's going to doom us all. Miguel wants to go be a musician, and he's talented and he's passionate. We've decided that you're going to be a shoemaker. You have your family here to guide you. And nothing's more important than family. And they're using like emotional manipulation to to do this. And I get frustrated with Pixar and Disney and kids movies where they position it this way. Because they're like, this is not a dynamic in all families. And so families where it's not a dynamic, it can be something that people become like primed to look for and find it even though it's not there. And so like they invent offenses. They invent things to be offended about when really they had it quite good. I've seen that in friends' lives. I've seen that in family members' lives where they invent things to be offended about. And I feel like children's entertainment has a moral responsibility to show like, and in its own way, both Moana and this movie do, where they there's reconciliation in the family. But ultimately, they have the kids right. Ultimately, the parents were getting in the way of the kids solving the problem. And I feel like that can be a destructive moral lesson.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that can be a slippery slope. I would pose, though, that what Moana and Coco both have in common is that trauma. Because the reason why Moana is my movie.
Yeah.
But
Because you have a Polynesian skeleton.
right. The other half of me. But with Moana's dad, the reason why he doesn't want her going out is because he and his friend had went out and his friend drowned.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want her to go out because he had this trauma in his life that he's creating these boundaries and these safeguards and ultimately, you know, like keeping her from, I mean, and he's willing to let the island die before he lets her venture out.
So she can die on the island, but she can't go die on the
right.
I want to contextualize it a bit, right? Like that
Think
movie,
of the coconuts.
That movie is a fantasy. Like magic isn't like that doesn't happen.
What?
And in a naturalist world, what his conclusion was as a parent, I'm like, no, that's correct.
Yeah.
Like it's my responsibility as a father to protect my kids from the stupidity of my own youth, to watch for those kinds of trends and be like, hey, this is where that behavior is going to get you. And so I'm not allowing you to engage in that behavior.
Right.
This is how it was destructive
In her
in my
defense,
life.
she had permission from grandma.
And
So like
that's
a parental figure, a adult that guided over her did say go.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
understand
she
that.
was not fully disobedient to
I get
family,
that.
just to her father.
And that's a
And
whole
her
other
mother knew.
conversation
And
of
her mother knew
grandma,
too.
don't be getting involved like that.
Yeah.
Don't parent your grandchildren
Yes.
if the
Overstepping.
parents are there.
That's true.
But like tying it back into this movie, of course, right? Like there are supernatural elements of this world to this that in the real world, the fact that Hector was poisoned never would have come up, right? Because all the stuff that
Right. They would have
revealed
never gotten that.
right. And so in the context of no, our family were shoemakers, we're going to train you to be a great shoemaker, like all this stuff. And then, like, when he's an adult, if he's probably going to run away and do instrument, like, that's a parenting issue that they need to solve. I get that. But I do get frustrated with this children's entertainment moral lessoning of, like, trust your heart over your parents. Like, I think that's a destructive and dangerous lesson to be telling people.
But if I can push back a little bit, because I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. But, like, there is a point in our age, though, like, there is a point in our individual journeys that we do get to a point where we do see the error in our parents' ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is it possible? And again, obviously we're talking about a fictitious movie, but like, is it possible though? She was a young adult. It's not like she was 5 or 6 years old. Like she was in her teenage years.
In the movie.
It's like
and he's 12. Miguel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about Moana and her dad.
Yeah, we're talking about Coco.
Okay, gotcha.
This week.
Right. I watched Frozen. But like, there is a point, like, and I've seen it as I've gotten older. I love my parents. Love my parents to death. I have no regrets. But there are things as I grow older, I go, really? Like, and now as I've become a parent, I've also go, my parents did this way, but that doesn't make sense. Like,
Yeah.
It's like there is going to be a time where we do have those realizations. Like
I don't
in
disagree.
the movie, she just moved forward quicker, and she saved the island.
But so there's two things here. One is the age of the character in question. Miguel's 12. That's about the age that you start getting defiant. But the other thing is like the age of what?
Oh, my daughter's already there.
Well, I mean, like defiant at this
Moana
scale.
was
Yes.
Moana's
Yes,
16 in the movie.
Defiant at this scale.
Yes.
My
No,
kids
I
are
got you.
defiant now, right? But the other thing, Jeff, is beyond just the age of the character, the age of the target market.
Target market.
Right? Who's the target market for kids' movies?
The Target Margaret.
All Margarets.
All Margarets at
Margarets
Target.
are the target of this.
But
Well, I wouldn't say all Pixar movies. Some of these last couple ones have been adult focused, more so.
But that's
in
not what
general,
they're marketed
kids
as.
are watching.
These are
Correct.
kids' movies.
Kids are watching.
Yeah.
But I think
And so
that.
I think that's a dangerous.
But then the parent in me says then that if you're really that upset, then that's when you pause the movie and you have the discussion or you talk about the movie afterwards of, hey, you know, we saw this that Miguel or Moana, you know, disobeyed.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know that, you know, when mommy and dad, like, and again, this is me to my
12-year-old.
2.5-year-old, like,
To my 18-year-old daughter.
when mommy and daddy say, no, that means no. And it's not because we don't love you. It's because we're trying to protect you.
Yeah.
But again, where I have to push back, and at least as it pertains to Moana and to Coco, it's that the parents are passing down these boundaries or these restrictions based out of trauma. Yeah. And it becomes overly protective, right? Like, again, for Moana's dad, he's willing to let the island die before he even lets her venture out because of that childhood trauma. Yeah, for all the Rivera family, like, we will never be anything else because we hate music, because we have to, because we chose to let this trauma define us. Yeah. You know, and it's when children generations down get that, and it's just like, but wait a second, like, this, how is this fair? Or, you know, there's another perspective to be seen here. Like, what if my great-great-grandfather was actually this great musician, and there is another way for me? So maybe it's just like, I think maybe it's my bias as a young parent, and I'm still viewing this as like part of like the kid in me. Sure. But I think that there's still the idea, I think the lesson to be learned as a parent is for me to be able to look at what rules and boundaries am I trying to instill that maybe I don't need to be as far reaching in, you know, because of course I absolutely agree with you that, like, yeah, there are things that I hope that my children understand. Like, I'm going to create these rules because I love you, because I've been there, because I don't want to see you hurt. Granted, I know they're going to be disobedient. I know they're going to act out, but at the same time, you know, at what point can I let up because I'm being too overprotective, you know, and I'm passing on hurts and narratives that might not need to be passed on, you know, and that's ultimately hurting my children. That's ultimately hurting my children's children. For the Rivera family, it was that root of bitterness that just stayed in all of them, that it's like, we don't even know why we hate this anymore. Like, that's eventually what it will be, right? Of like, we don't even really know why we hate music. We just know that we're shoemakers. Right. Yeah. And that what ugliness is that going to bring about? And so again, I look at this from a parent perspective of what hurts and damages am I going to pass on through my kids that my kids' are going to be feeling, all because there's this awful metaphor that I had a previous boss years and years and years ago.
What was his name?
How dare you assume that it was a man?
Well, that's because women aren't allowed to have positions of management.
It was a man. Anyways. But he would tell us this story of, like, I'm going to butcher this. This woman learned from her mother, who learned it from her mother, who learned it from her mother, that when you cook a ham, you cut both ends off and you just make the ham and
go ham.
You go ham and you pass this on. And so eventually the one daughter says, why do we even do this? She asked great-great-great-grandma, why is it so important that we cut the ham on both ends before we cook it? And great-great-grandma says, oh, I just didn't have a pan that was big enough once for my ham, so I cut off the ends. And it's like, oh my gosh, we've been doing this for how many years, all because of something that
it's irrelevant now.
Yes. Yeah. And so again, like, I think of that, of when I see this movie and thinking of its connection to Moana, of like, what things am I passing on to my kids that they're going to get to and be like, wait a second, like, I have the capacity or the ability to confront this trauma or to forgive or, you know, be able to see something from a different perspective. And why am I going to continue to choose bitterness and unforgiveness when now I can find out the truth, you know, or be released from it? So you're wrong, Nelson.
Yeah,
so
probably.
To dive in this a little deeper. So say it wasn't music. So say everything in Coco was the exact same. But for Miguel, he didn't really care about music. He just didn't want to be a shoemaker. Do you think they would have been as picky if he wanted to go and farm or go and be a chocolate maker or go?
It's just that he wanted to be a musician.
Okay, so we see him polishing shoes and we see his parents going, "Oh, we're going to move you from shoe polishing to actually into the
here's your apron."
It's like we see them pushing that on him.
Right, and he says, I don't know anything about shoemaking. Right, and he says, you have your family here to guide you.
Right, and it has nothing to do with that specific conversation. Had nothing to do with avoiding music. Right, it was just the fact they're like, no, this is. I got the vibe that like he was going to be a shoemaker, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Like just like.
I mean, it's also he's 13 and they're a family of shoemakers. Like, this is what we do.
Right.
Especially in like rural areas, it's not uncommon for like
Right.
you learn what your
Right.
parents.
But do you think if
do.
he pushed back and went, when I get older, even I don't want to be a shoemaker? Do you think they would have had a pitch to fit?
No, I think the tension here was that he wanted to be a musician specifically.
And let's spin it to Moana then.
Because even when he was getting the blessing from Imelda or whatever her name is,
Esmeralda.
it wasn't like you will be a shoemaker. It was and you will never play music again.
Right.
Stay away from hunchbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ring the bell.
In Moana, what if Moana didn't want to be the leader of the island?
She didn't.
But she also wanted to go out to sea. Like, but what if it was just as simply as like, I don't want to be the leader. Like you see that a lot in like not family tragedy or family legacy, but just this idea of like, we've talked about this before. Just this idea that like, no, you're going to be in the family business.
Right.
Like we're 3 generations of lawyers. You're going to be like.
My favorite one of that is Step Brothers. Where it's like, Dad, I thought I was going to join the family business, and his dad's like, I'm a doctor, and you're like a 40-year-old man who never got an education.
I've never seen it.
What does he say?
But yeah, so just
Do you know?
Yeah, that's all you know.
Anyways.
so I just thought of it in that light of like, music aside, like was his family so set on like no shoemaking's it like.
That wasn't the impression I got.
Okay.
But
Cool.
not very many movies that we do have an explicit religious bias. And this one has a very explicit religious claim, which is there isn't a heaven and hell.
But it did talk about an eternity. It did have a conversation of an existence of an eternity, just wasn't depicted as heaven and hell.
Yeah, not even eternity. It's
Well,
if your
correct.
family puts your picture on the mantle,
afterlife, yeah.
you can come and see your family once a year. They don't see you, but you see them. If the last person who knew you in life forgets you and your picture is not on the mantle, you then disappear forever and they don't know where you go. It could be heaven and hell past that, but it's not explicit about it.
Yeah.
Clearly from De La Cruz, there's no like punishment in this afterlife for behavior.
Yeah.
There's-
Everyone's goes to that.
That's
realm.
right. Despite there being a cemetery and I think maybe some crosses in there, I don't remember a church. Like there's like very much this movie is like a religious, despite this being a Catholic tradition. There's no talk of any kind of faith perspectives. There's no praying. There's nothing. And it's just like there is no
they
afterlife.
minimally talk about the altar and the offerings. There's small dialogue,
But
but
that
not
altar,
in detail.
but that altar and offering is like ancestral worship altar
Correct.
offering,
Correct.
not
correct. Yeah. So like, even in that, it was minimal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. And again, one of those areas where like we as parents, we need to be a little bit more, because I've watched this with my kids a bunch of times. I've watched Moana with my kids a bunch of times. Never once have we had the conversation of, hey, these kids are being rebellious and you need to weigh that. Like you can't just rebel for the sake of rebelling, right? There's weight to that. There's consequences for that. When we tell you things, it's because we believe we have your best interest. In both these cases, the parents believe they had their kids' best interest, right? Even in the context of don't become a musician, it's because those are the kinds of people that abandon their families, right? It was really more about the don't be the kind of person that abandons their family than it was about music. They just lumped the two together, and so like there's part of me that's like I get what the parents are trying to teach here. They're just doing it poorly, and I think that we as parents, like kids movies specifically, always remind me of this when we get to cover a kids movie on this podcast. Jeff, is just like how much more intentional we as parents need to be about talking about what's this movie communicating to you.
Absolutely.
And this we talked about this with Inside Out as well too.
Yeah.
That he and you didn't like Inside Out, but like you and I both enjoy that movie as far as entertainment purposes go, and we all agreed though like it's a great discussion starter.
Conversation.
Yeah.
It's not the end all be all decision
emotions run
of
you.
alternate like ultimate truth of something,
Right.
but it brings up good topics that are worth discussing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then and I think that's what we kind of all culminated like that. We appreciated because of the fact that
Well, mine was it
starts-
does more harm than good, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that with
don't think we all
Coco too. I think that
we all
can,
agreed. I'm gonna unplug your mic.
I think that with Coco too, it gives me the perspective of I'm very thankful that this is not it. You
Yeah.
know, and I think that can be the greater conversation too, again, that you can have with kids. If like, yeah, wasn't that a fun movie? But also isn't it really good to know that that's not how it happens
That's
after
not the
we
end of the
die?
story.
Yeah, you know, there is the reality of hell. Like for me, that's I don't know, bias or absolute truth for me. Like hell is a real place, you know, like it is a real destination.
Washington D.C.
Remember,
Oh, don't even.
speaking my language.
But
Remember 10, 15 years ago, there was that book about that kid that died and like he came back
Heaven's for
like,
real.
Yeah. Imagine if you wrote the sequel. Hell is for real. It's real, guys.
Sheesh. But yeah, I think that stop with the giggles. I think that that's the segue that
Wrap
you
up
can
the
have.
trilogy with Purgatory's Not.
Definitively no.
But
both
yeah,
exist.
of just helping kids to understand that, you know, it's not all based on who remembers you and who doesn't. You
Right.
know, it is important to talk about like our family, and it is important that we remember where we came from. But it's even more important to know that like if Christ has you in his hand, nothing's plucking you from that. You know, so you can guarantee that you don't have to worry about whether or not your picture is on someone's, you know, altar or not. Like
Just
they're
need the
like
name written in a book.
correct, and
On
nothing's
an
gonna
altar.
like you were seated in the heavenly place with Christ. Like I
had
think
a
that's
friend
a
that was-
good.
Sorry, you were saying I interrupted.
No, that's okay. I think that it's, again, movies like this that can help me when my daughter is old enough, when my daughter and my son are old enough to have this conversation, to be able to tell them, like, hey, this was really fun to watch, but isn't it really cool that we know that there's a truth of if you accept Jesus, you are going to a wonderful place forever. And it doesn't matter who knows you or who doesn't know you. As long as Jesus knows you, then you are going to be there, and I'll be there waiting. Like, whew, I could cry over that. Like,
Yeah.
I think that that's been really cool. My daughter's getting to that age to where we can kind of start to plant those seeds of conversation of just like, you know, like you don't go to heaven just because you're going to church, and you don't go to heaven just because
Right.
you like
Yeah, it's
do
because
whatever.
you don't eat fish on
And
Fridays.
it's not because your parents are. Like,
Right.
Because you don't eat meat. You
Like-
do eat fish.
Yeah.
like, and so I
I'm not
don't
a
know.
good Catholic. I'm not a bad Catholic either. I'm not a Catholic. And the other thing is, like, kids are ready for those conversations way earlier than we think they're going to be.
Yes, it's just having those age appropriate conversations.
Like, I talk with my 4-year-old about the Federal Reserve, for example.
We pray with our daughter.
It's actually
every night.
not even a joke. Like,
Yeah.
We were not.
I said it as a
questioning
joke, and I was like, actually, no, I'm pretty,
We
yeah,
weren't
we have had that
questioning that.
conversation.
We pray with our daughter every night, and like
Yeah.
she, you know, the first couple months when she was able to start reciting things, and this is just me bragging. You know, this it's not super relevant, but we're talking about training up our the next generation stuff. Like, first of all, you know, it was okay. We'll pray, and then she'll listen, and then it went to her essentially just going, "Dear Jesus, love mommy, love daddy, amen." Like it'd be as simple as that. But now it's gone to like, and she, the newest thing she started, which is the point of this whole story, is she started going, "Love you," but like it's like so she started for us like and through I mean hopefully through our parenting and through going just through all the things that we're trying to do to instill that in her. Like she now knows like when she says like there's that connection between I love you and I love Jesus. Like I'm hoping it started like it's like I'm excited like. Your daughter's a little older than mine, so like I know, like there's like, but like it's
Your daughter, Carlos.
Carlos De La Cruz
Esmeralda.
is a little older, but like it's getting to a cool place where you can start to sort of have some logical
Yes.
conversations with it, and you can talk about just a little bit bigger of things than just yes, no, why, poop, and pee.
And
like,
the flip side of that is that our daughter has also been very defiant and has not wanted to pray recently. Like she's gone from doing the cute, like, thank you, Jesus, for mommy, daddy, our doggy, for my brother, and our house. Amen. But now she's gone to like, thank you, Jesus, for Jesus, for Jesus, for Jesus. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're not going to pray, then you're going to be quiet and be respectful, you know, of like, this might not be important to you yet,
Right.
Yeah.
but, you know, this is important to mommy and daddy. And you're going to, like, you don't have to join,
right.
but you're going to be respectful.
Absolutely.
And again, I think that goes back to what do I want to pass down to my kids? And it's the power of choice of you do have a say of what you do, right? Like, you have a say in your faith. You have a say in your body. You have a say in your emotions, you know, going back to Inside Out, like not making it all you central, I guess, but just like, I don't want this to be something that you feel like you don't have an active part in, that you have to be a passive player in. And it's like, okay, if this isn't important to you right now, that's okay, but you will be respectful because this is important to us.
Right.
So anyways, all about those conversations that you have with them, because I agree with you, Nelson, that kids are ready for this way sooner than what we realize.
Yeah.
And in that, like, I think of all the things that like my mom let me watch growing up. One of them not being Harry Potter, but I could watch The Little Mermaid, and it's like they both have witchcraft. And it's like, you know, and what did Little Mermaid teach me? That I could be defiant because I'm in love with a boy, and I don't care what you say and what you're going to do to, you know, keep me away from that boy.
Right.
Like, but we never, like, there was never the awkward conversation. I think that's where parents get tripped up, right? Of like, oh, well, this is supposed to be fun. Like, I don't want to use this to have an awkward conversation. Like, no, you have to have the awkward conversation, because how much would it have benefited me then to have the conversation of, listen, you know, sometimes like, you know, daughters and dads are gonna get mad at each other. Sometimes dads are gonna do things that they shouldn't do in anger, you know, the way that King Triton blows up her whole collection of doodads and whatchamacallits and stuff. And it's like, that wasn't okay for him to act that way. But at the end of the day, what you have to understand is that, you know, his rules are his rules and you will respect those. You know, it's like, what benefit would that conversation have had for me when I was young, consuming that all the time on repeat?
Yep.
What could that have done when I was a teenager and, you know, was rebelling? Like, and so I hope that I'm not obviously going to catch every opportunity now, but I'm going to take advantage of that now to have those faith conversations, or to have those conversations of, you know, hey, Moana's dad, you know, didn't want her to go out to sea, but it wasn't because he didn't want her to have fun. It's because, you know, he's been there, done that, and is trying to protect her. Like,
yeah, there is a right time for kids to like fly the nest and do their own thing,
right,
and try to figure out who they are and what the world is and all that stuff. My struggle with it is, should we be telling like 4 and 5-year-olds that this is acceptable behavior? Because at 4 and 5, they don't have.
Well, I don't know if this movie was appropriate for a 4 and 5-year-old.
Well, I got one last thing, and let's get into rapid questions then. My last thing here is Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
That's a Bible verse.
Rapid questions.
Oh, okay. That was just your
mic drop moment.
Yeah. Boom. Some old dead guy said that, and I think it's pretty on point.
Yeah. But is his picture still up? And like, is he still?
But there's also the verse of, sorry, I've also been thinking of this.
Dun, 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 dun.
We understand that it's important to honor your mother and your father, right? There's also the verse that I think that parents need to take into consideration. Basically, don't provoke your child to anger.
Yeah.
And I think that those are two realities in tandem
One
with...
of them is specifically, fathers don't exacerbate your children.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, you're right.
Yes. In tandem with Proverbs 22, that I think kids need to understand, and parents need to understand as well, of what you instill in your kid. If you're going to provoke your child to anger, part of that is not training up a child in the way that they should go, because you are provoking them to be angry, or you're provoking them to. So, anyways,
yeah,
it's a dance.
You're 100% right.
All right, wrap up questions.
So, would you recommend this film, Sarah? Let's go around the table.
Yes. Yeah. I think viewing it as a parent now, especially going through the things that I've gone through in the past 6 months in counseling, I think it hit me a totally different way that I felt parts of before, but now that I've been exploring trauma more, like it is very sobering to me, I think. But aside from that, I mean, I think that it's got a good twist. It's really fun. I think that Coco walked so Encanto could run. I also think, just from this very, very quick tangent, I think from the bigger perspective of white children, or like American children, being exposed to other cultures and being willing to learn Spanish, like,
yeah, I agree. I'm against it.
Like being able to say names like Miguel, email that, like, you know, and then
Hector.
later Mirabel, like that would, like, Mirabel would have never been a character 25 years ago because it's such a difficult name to pronounce. Like, so anyways, I think even just from
we
the
get
perspective,
Jasmine, we get Pocahontas, we get. I don't disagree. I just don't entirely buy that narrative. It is great.
Wait, you have a disagreeing perspective? Tell us more, Nelson.
I said I don't disagree.
But you said but
I don't like the narrative.
Go on, keep going.
It is true that Latin characters have not been super well represented.
Agreed.
But it's not true that non-whites haven't been represented. Like, I grew up in an era where, like, the Huxtables were an awesome family. And, like, Will Smith was, like, the guy to be. Mm-hmm. So, like, I reject that narrative a bit. Latin characters specifically, I agree. Mm-hmm. Latin characters have not been totally represented. But, like, I mean, like, Aladdin is an absolute juggernaut of the Disney films, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. But also, I mean, there's also the side thing of the way that even these characters, like, the voice actors who play them.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The way that they're designed is not how those people look.
They've lightened Jasmine's skin tone in, like, later releases.
Yeah, so many things. So, but with Coco, I think Coco was huge because it introduces people to, man, I want to, and again, slippery slope maybe of, you know, family veneration or whatever. I think from just the basic thing of, it makes learning about another culture, learning a language that's not English, important and cool and fun and interesting, I think is huge.
Yeah.
So, and I think Coco and Encanto are wonderful examples of that to help kids, you know, not be intimidated by other cultures. So, yeah, I would recommend Coco. I think it's fun. For age audience, I will say that my daughter watched it with me and she kept pointing at the skeletons today and she's like, it's a monster, it's a monster. And so I think maybe probably wouldn't just put this on for her to watch and be entertained by the colors. We'll probably listen to the soundtrack and she'll love that. But I think it's definitely meant for an older child. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Would you recommend those?
There are a lot of Pixar movies I would recommend before this.
Inside Out being one.
Never.
For example, A Bug's Life isn't in the top 250, and I think that's a tragedy. I don't think this is a bad movie.
I do know your political stance on bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Extermination. I like this movie. I like it a lot more than Inside Out. I think it's a lot less. I think the conclusions of this movie are a lot less problematic than Inside Out. But I don't know if I'd recommend it. Like, I wouldn't if someone was like, we're going to go watch Coco, I wouldn't discourage them by any means. But, like, there's movies where it's like, hey, have you seen this? You need to see this? This isn't one of those for me.
That makes sense. That's fair.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it. I think music's fun. Like, you know, it's not music that I'm typically around. So even just the arts that are involved in this movie, like,
this kind of music gets played a lot in my house.
Okay. See,
And it's a really great soundtrack in English and in Spanish, which is really cool.
And the song,
Coco Loco.
No, the song he sings to his friend just before his friend disappears forever.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows Juanita.
Yes, everyone knows Juanita is the song they wrote for this movie. But, like, that kind of song, that heavy innuendo song, is, like, super common in mariachi. And my wife sings.
Mariachi, she sounds nice.
Yeah, lovely lady. Yeah, I enjoy the music in this. I think it's great.
Yeah. So,
La Llorona is the song that the great grandmother sings, and that's about, like, a Mexican folklore of, like, this, I'm pretty sure a crying woman in her wedding dress. Which, like, gives also some context to
her and Hector.
As well, yeah.
I enjoyed this movie.
But it's like a folk tale, like, horror thing.
Right.
La Llorona.
Right.
So.
Yeah, they made a horror movie about it too.
Yeah.
Later on.
Really? Mm-hmm. It's the sequel to Coco.
Yeah.
La Llorona. Check it out. Link below.
I would recommend it. Just for the introduction or immersification of a different culture. in an animated movie. I think it's done really well.
I think people should double down on their own cultures. Don't explore.
Nelson, this is my time to talk.
I
you
have the
could turn
talking
your
stick.
microphone on. No, so for that reason, I would say yes, I'd recommend it. I think it's a fun watch. It's from beginning to end. It's high, it moves pretty quick. Just in the topic of comparing it to the other Pixar movie we've done, I've got this rated lower than Inside Out for me personally, and my list is strictly on my rewatchability.
Yep, I know.
And for me, the thing that beat Coco with Inside Out was the comedy. There wasn't as much comedy in Coco. And I love the banter between all the emotions in Inside Out. I love Phyllis's sadness. It's just like, there's so much more comedy in Inside Out that for me, I would watch Inside Out over Coco just because of enjoyment.
Give me an out of 5 for this.
Out of 5?
Yeah.
Out of 10, I gave it 7. Do the math, Nelson.
3.5.
3.5. Yeah.
I would say that it's all nuanced because, again, I think that this is something that, again, with going back to Leo and the kid with the eye patch, and I don't know, I think this is something that's more recent for me, but I do think that representation matters. And I enjoyed Coco so much. And I can't remember, I think it was with Coco that someone was like, I wanted to really like it. And I just didn't. And they didn't know Spanish. Mm-hmm. And they were white. Like, there's so many nuanced things. Like, the chancla that the abuela takes, like, her shoe, when she takes off her shoe and she throws it at the mariachi in the plaza.
Yeah.
Like, that is just so hilarious to me because that is just a running joke in our family of, like, you're going to get the chancla. And then the way that she throws it at him. And then even when she was like, when she smashed his guitar and he's, like, upset and she goes, you'll feel better once you eat with your family. Like, that is just hilarious because that is exactly how our family works. Like,
or she brings more food and he's like, I'm not hungry. She's like, what?
Yeah.
And he's like,
I think that you said that you wanted another tamale. And he's like,
she gives him, like,
yes,
4.
abuela. Yeah. That is just so...
very Latin.
It's just... I think it's just because it's nuanced thing.
Yeah.
But that was my favorite part of, like, where I could be like Jen and, like, pause it and be like, this is so funny.
Yeah.
Or, like, my husband who's white, like, can laugh because he's like, that's so your family. I'm like, I know. Like,
they're crazy, right?
yeah. Isn't it really funny to get beaten with a shoe?
I did. So for me, Inside Out was a 7 as well on IMDb Top 10.
Yeah.
But just because there's movies in between it on my list that I'm creating.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave them both 7s.
I'd give this because I'm not doing IMDb,
Right,
but
you're
I'm
doing
doing
Letterboxd.
Letterboxd. I'd give it a 3.5. That's what I had it in my mind. So yeah, I think like 3.5 is like that break point of like 4. You're probably hearing me tell you about this movie that you need to see.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Has it aged well? 6 years. 6
Yeah.
years old. Do you think it's aged nicely?
Yeah.
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 I recently walked into the living room with my kids watching the first Toy Story, and eventually we'll get to that, but it has not.
Well, spoiler alert. I haven't watched that one yet.
Ever?
No, I'm kidding. I've watched Toy Story. Sarah, and actually, one of the first times you and I started interacting back in our, when you first came to the church and stuff it was sort of around the same time as Toy Story 4 coming out. You would come and then sometime after Toy Story 4 came out, and I remember you and I interacting, we were talking movies, and I feel like for me it's one of my earliest memories of interacting with you is talking about your perspective on Toy Story 4.
I love
versus
Toy
mine.
Story
hate
movies.
Toy Story 4.
Really?
Yeah.
I hate
4.
Toy Story 4.
4, it was 4. So
It was
I love that
completely
franchise,
unnecessary.
though.
1 and 3 are on the top 250. 1 and 3 are on the top 250.
Really? 3 is strictly based on nostalgia, and
sure.
I'm absolutely okay with that.
1 and 2 are by far the best.
I disagree. I think each movie does a really great job exploring. It's weird because, like, with the Toy Story franchise, the main character is Andy. Each movie, what Woody's experiencing and going through, which you're actually trying to digest and understand, is Andy's experiences at different phases of life.
Interesting.
And I think it's really beautiful. But I get why people have their issues with 2 and 4. I really love, I love those movies.
I like 1 through 3. 4
But
is just completely
the visuals of Toy
unnecessary.
Story do not hold up.
Oh yeah, the original one? No,
Real bad.
absolutely not.
But at the it was so impressive. Though,
Yes.
when
Oh, yeah.
and it
I
changed
remember.
animation
It was,
forever.
I
it
remember.
was incredible.
My mom
And then I
was
remember
blown.
like when A Bug's Life came out, it was soon after was Ants, and I remember just going like,
Ants is
Grown-up
DreamWorks.
version.
Yeah.
But I remember when Toy Story came out, Small Soldiers came out at the same time. And that was
Army
like,
Man, yeah.
so like that's 1995. Toy Story and Small Soldiers comes out, and that was my first exposure to, movies with similar concepts often come out together. And then Bugs Life and Ants came out. I was like, that's so weird. I vaguely remember having a conversation with my dad about it.
That's funny.
So yeah, I would
I've been
I
like
think this
4
one's
or
aged
5.
well.
Aged
6
well.
years has not done much to the. All right, around the table. Will this be in your top 250?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a handful of Pixar that would make my top 250, and this isn't it.
Okay. I feel like this could be one that would eventually fall off, but right now, it's whole like I don't know. Like I'm making a literal list here, and I don't know.
I'm personally offended every time a movie ranks better than The Jerk with you.
This ranked under The Jerk for me. So both were 7, but I put on replayability. This is under The Jerk. So
Okay, all right.
back off.
First numeric, then alphabetic.
But yeah, so I don't know if this one would end up making it. This one's I'm neutral about it. I like it, but if it's not there, I won't be heartbroken.
Yeah.
And then we added this question since we've done, and you may not have heard an episode with this question in it yet.
Okay.
So we have one more question as we end this episode here is, why do you think it's on the top 250?
I think the representation
Is a big aspect, yeah.
I was even reading like
And it's
IMDb's
representation done right.
Yes. Yeah, very, very well. Again, maybe not accurately to like what,
Yeah.
Catholics in
It's not
Mexico
super
feel.
authentic Mexican, but it's ambiguously Latin enough that like all Latin Americans can resonate with it.
Yeah.
And even like I was reading the trivia section of IMDb too, of like how it just exploded in like Mexican theaters.
Yeah.
And even how like the review board of like China even admitted it. Like normally they would censor it, but they're like, you know what, we can like resonate with some of these
Well, it's
themes
got
so
everything
well
they
that-
love. Ancestor worship, strong family bonds.
But yeah,
Destruction
so
of music.
I think from representation, and yeah, I think the nuances too of family, a matriarchal family structure too, which I think isn't completely a Latin concept. I think that you can see that in a lot of minority groups, even minority groups like in marginalized societies in America. But yeah, and I think it's got a great soundtrack. I think it's fun.
Yeah. Why do you think it's on the top 250?
All those same reasons, actually.
You can't. That cop out.
Thanks, Nelson.
No,
But she's wrong about all of them.
She's wrong about it, but that's
It's
the reason.
exact opposite reasons.
Yeah.
I can see why, but that's why it's not
that's
on my
not
250.
No, that's why I think it's there. Yeah.
I have to say the same thing. And as I'm talking, I'm quickly scanning through the 250. There's, as of right now, there's no other Hispanic.
Yes, there are.
There are. Okay, I haven't got to them yet. You can start naming them rather than waiting.
Amores Perros, Three Idiots.
Hispanic cartoons.
Oh, yeah, animation.
I'm saying on the top 250. There's what other Hispanic movies are there?
I just named 2.
Okay, name them again. You were
Amores Perros, Love Dogs.
Love Dogs.
Yeah,
Love Dogs.
Amorres Perros.
Okay.
Three Idiots, which is the English translation. The thing is with the IMDb, almost all the Spanish titled movies get translated to English. Same thing with Italian, same thing with French and German. Almost all the Japanese, though, they leave them in their Japanese. The Korean ones get translated. Like it's inconsistent.
Okay. So you're saying there's 2 other
There's
Hispanic
at least
films.
2 for sure.
Okay.
I believe that there's more than that.
Okay.
Cool.
And those ones are like they're Latin American productions, not
Right.
not
okay.
movies, not
They're
American
they're
productions.
international films.
Yeah.
So Coco
Yeah.
is the only
It
American
does-
film with Hispanic heritage in it.
As far as I'm aware, there might be more.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not recognizing anything else, and I didn't know of those 2. I just saw Three Idiots, and I didn't know that it was a Spanish film. So yeah, it's.
I'm pretty sure it is. I'm like 99.9%.
It's
sure.
well written. It's a great story. It's emotional. The music's good. It's visually stunning. It's not
Interesting
overdone.
concept.
It's not dragged out. Like it's poignant. Like
Yeah.
the concept is very cleanly stated as far as like what the movie's presenting. So yeah, I think it's a great piece of entertainment. It's a great piece of art, and it's a great story.
Yeah.
And
my biggest complaint is like I have questions about the economics. Like, how does this city work?
Love it.
They use the leaf petals. The petals. That's their.
I asked ChatGPT, and that's actually part of the answer it gave. And I was like, no, I'm watching this movie. It's definitely not that.
Yeah, so
Currency that they build a bridge out of.
Yeah.
That'll speak.
grow a tree and build a bridge.
Yeah.
The petals come off.
Build a
They're
bridge.
flowers.
Yeah.
And as we land this plane, we have a request from our audience.
Instead of SpaceX, we'll call it Latinx.
Latinx.
Latinx Airlines. Latinx Airlines. Sorry.
I loved it.
Anyway,
Do it.
Please check out our links below for merchandise. We got coffee mugs, we got shirts, we got iPad covers, and then
eye patches maybe.
Eye patches.
Maybe we'll do exclusive eye patches
Yeah.
for this episode.
A Sara
see what we can
special
do.
eye patch.
Yeah.
I will find
Sarah
a picture
will
of myself
sign
with my eye
every single-
patch, and we can make an eye patch out of it.
A
Representation
picture of you
matters.
with your eye patch on the eye patch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
representation matters.
I
You're
see.
welcome.
And then check out our Patreon. At the time of recording, no, at the time of publishing, we have 2 episodes live, I believe.
Yep. If
we-
not, it's coming soon. The second one's coming soon.
Yeah.
But it's out by this episode.
Yeah, I believe it's out by the time this episode airs.
Yeah.
Got Godfather Part 3 and the best movie ever made, objectively speaking, The Jerk. And next month we'll be covering, or perhaps this month, if this is airing in November, this month we'll be covering
Airplane.
exclamation mark,
Airplane.
exclamation mark,
Airplane.
exclamation mark.
That's right. But next week, we're going to talk about a town in Minnesota, right?
North Dakota.
North Dakota. We're going to be talking about Fargo, North Dakota.
I believe I've got that right.
It's Fargo somewhere.
We are doing that because also
Let's
next
see
week,
how far I go. No,
also
that didn't
next
work.
week will be the
North Dakota.
North Dakota. Nice. The Canadian New.
Also next week will be the debut of season 5 of Fargo.
That's right.
So you've been warned. If you haven't caught up, now's your chance. Watch the movie.
Sarah, thank you for coming back. Thank you
Thanks
for
for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us here in your location in Tijuana. We love having you. Probably won't be the last time.
I hope not. It's been
Yeah.
fun, guys.
Maybe we'll get you an off Pixar movie next time.
Yeah. I promise that I'm not solely good for Disney movies.
I'm cool with you being whatever movie you want.
I
but just-
appreciate you
but
guys
just-
asking me.
We don't want to pigeonhole you if there's some other movies that are not Pixar that you'd like to be on. But you're a great guest. We love talking to you, and we love your perspective, and we know the listeners do too.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
As you are a listener, and you've told us yourself that your favorite episode
I'm
is
my
Kids
number
Psych
one.
101.
I told you, yeah.
It's also your son's favorite episode. Sarah, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Counseling, Jesus Christ,
And motherhood.
Yeah, and motherhood, and just
Awesome.
yeah,
All 3 of those things are linked below.
You're like, I don't know about the motherhood thing.
talking to your kids after Disney movies. It's worth it. So
Absolutely.
have the awkward conversations.
So we watched through the Jurassic Park franchise, and then we did The Hobbit. Now we're doing Lord of the Rings, and I've found myself regularly like pausing so that we can have a discussion about something that just happened on TV.
Elves.
With like Jurassic Park, there was a lot of pausing to talk about hubris and market incentives.
You know, those
and
movies aren't real humorous. I would say like there's probably more humorous movies out there, like The Jerk, Airplane.
And so, we talk about government intervention and market incentives and hubris and ego and all this stuff. So,
All
pause.
of which come from Jeff Goldblum.
If you're watching a movie with your kids,
Yeah.
pause and talk about what they've just seen.
Yeah. Don't do it in the theater.
Don't
while
wait
you're
till-
sitting next to people.
Yeah, don't do it in the theater.
Yeah.
And don't wait till the end of the movie because you're not going to remember.
Yeah,
Pause. Talk about it right then.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, listeners.
You're welcome. On behalf of the listeners, you're welcome, Jeff.
And we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did.
If you found value in what we discussed today, please consider leaving us a rating and review. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
If you have any feedback or suggestions, we would love to hear from you.
That's right, tell us why we're wrong.
If you want even more content and ways to engage with us and each other, check out our Patreon page.
By supporting us there, you'll get access to exclusive bonus content and help us continue to create high-quality episodes, as well as help pay for our future plans. Links to our social media, merchandise, and Patreon are in the show notes.